Call.
Festerson.
Here.
Gray.
Here.
Harding.
Here.
Melton. Pauls.
Here.
Palermo.
Here.
Mr. President.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for remarks by Councilmember Pauls.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon. I'm going to speak just a little bit about one of the individuals standing up here. It's by the name of Vinny Palermo. 2 weeks ago, he invited me to attend a ball game in South Omaha on 36 and Q. And all I heard in the crowd was, Vinny, Vinny, Vinny. I got tired of it. I want to say, hey, Rich is here too, but I didn't. But anyway, he invited several of us to be there, and I think some people were there at other time, part of the day. It was to a PACE ball game for the kids. Well, I think the police are very involved in, correct? And Vinny was up there, and he was a coach. And I mean, man, you talk about a tenacious person. But anyway, he did treat everybody well. But he also happened, what I thought was pretty nice about it is because both of these teams had played each other in the past. I think one had beaten the other one. And today it was a pretty tight game. Vinny was sweating, of course. But he had also, at this function, he had also invited what I call two Republicans, myself being one, and Congressman Bacon, just make sure you're listening to me. And then he invited a couple Dems, which he is, and then Mike Boyle.
I hope they don't get harder.
Well, we're trying to make this a little light. But anyway, and we were laughing, having a good time. The game was over, and everybody's yelling, saying great things. And, you know, when I played ball many, many years ago, and when you have politicians together, oh, and by the way, his team did win the championship. Is that not true?
I was hoping you didn't forget that part.
And the reason why, because he has a young daughter, and I know he's going to retire young if she turns pro, because he's going to live off his daughter's life. That's what I mean. Well, anyway, what I thought was interesting, you had both teams there really wanting to win, and you had four politicians there. And when I was younger, this is what I would hear. But I heard no trash talk that day. Sort of setting up, I guess, what are we going to talk about today? Trash. Oh, took my line. Thank you.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the City Council. We thank you for joining us. As a courtesy to those in attendance, we ask you please turn off or silence your cell phones. At this time, we have a proclamation.
Thank you, Mr. President. As many of you know, tomorrow and later on this week, most of our young people will be going back to school. And this proclamation recognizes a national as well as a local group that has been sponsoring the Million Fathers March for several years now. And I would like to ask Mr. Willie Hamilton with Black Men United to come to the podium, please, while we read this proclamation and present it to him for the Million Fathers March, which is going to be tomorrow at 8:15. 8:15 tomorrow. And the proclamation reads, whereas on this first day of school, 2019-2020, families, teachers, and students set goals for achievement and attendance. And whereas fathers are our children's first teacher and set the example for academic success and love of learning, and whereas research has demonstrated that even from birth, children who have an engaged father are more likely to be emotionally secure, confident to explore their surroundings, and as they grow old, have better social connections. And whereas when fathers are actively engaged, children are less vulnerable to the risk of childhood poverty, mental illness, juvenile delinquency, youth sexual activity, teenage pregnancy, substance abuse, and failure to complete high school. And whereas father engagement and parent education programs help fathers gain parental skills and economic self-sufficiency, being parenting, leading to better students, better schools, and better communities. And whereas on behalf of the Omaha citizens, we thank Black Men United for local sponsorship of an event that raises awareness of the importance of fathers playing a positive role in their children's education. Now, therefore, we, the City Council of the City of Omaha, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, August 14th, 2019, as Million Father March Day in Omaha.
First of all, I want to say
Name
thank
and
you.
address, please.
Address 4200 North 30th Street. That's where my office is located, but I'm actually a resident of South Omaha, 5009 8th Street, Apartment 3.
And we know you're Willie, but you have to tell the clerk.
My name is Willie Hamilton. And I want to thank you again for acknowledging the work that we do. This is our 13th year, and we have recognized that fathers play a very important role. And we know that when a father is actively engaged in a child's education, Councilman Gray alluded to everything. Education problems goes down. Gang problems goes down. Sexual proudness goes down. So we want to make sure that we acknowledge our fathers and the role that they play. And also, I just want to thank you again for acknowledging the work that we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Items 6 to 8 relate to the same project and can be considered together for Chestnut Hills, located northwest of Kilpatrick Parkway and State Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 6, an ordinance to rezone this property from AG District to R4 District, high density. Item 7, a resolution to approve final plat for Chestnut Hills. Item 8, a resolution to approve the Chestnut Hills subdivision agreement.
The public hearing on items 6 through 8 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Mr. President, members of the council, John Bachman, 10250 Regency Circle. I'm here on behalf of the applicant and will answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Mr. Gray.
Oh, I'm sorry, I left it on. I meant to turn it off.
Roll call.
Festerson. Yes. Gray. Yes. Harding. Melton. Yes. Pauls. Yes. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 6 through 8 are approved, 7-0. Items 9 and 10 relate to the same project and can be considered together for the Villas of Piney Creek, located east of 204th Street and north of Blondo Parkway. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 9, a resolution to approve the final plat for the Villas of Piney Creek. Item 10, a resolution to approve the Villas of Piney Creek subdivision agreement.
The public hearing on items 9 and 10 begin at this time. Are there any proponents?
Yes, good afternoon, members of the council. Kyle Bull, E&A Consulting Group, 10909 Mill Valley Road. This is the second phase project, 60 single-family villa lots, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding.
Yes.
Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 9 and 10 are approved, 7-0. Item 11, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for Millwork Commons located northeast of 14th and Nicholas Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
The public hearing on item 11 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Yes, Kendra Ringenberg, 9500 West Dodge Road, Suite 100. I'm here on behalf of the developer. I also have representatives from the developer here, Paul Smith and Keith Weeses, and Katie Underwood from Olson. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 11 is approved, 7-0. Item 12, an application to consider a Class C liquor license for Lighthouse Bar and Grill located at 2505 South 132nd Street.
The public hearing on item 12 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Yes, Gary Blatchko, 15676 West Maple Road, on behalf of Lighthouse Bar and Grill.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 12 is approved, 7-0. Item 13, an application to consider a Class D liquor license for 96th Street Quick and Friendly located at 4751 South 96th Street.
The public hearing on item 13 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Farooq Rakimov, and I'm here. My address is 4751 South 96th Street, here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls.
Yes.
Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 13 is approved, 7-0. Item 14, an application to consider in addition to the Arboretum's Class I liquor license located at 8141 Farnham Drive to add an area approximately 25 feet by 44 feet and an outdoor area approximately 46 feet by 43 feet to the east.
The public hearing on item 14 begins at this time. Are there any proponents?
Good afternoon, council members. David Levy, Baird Home Law Firm, 1700 Farnham Street, here on behalf of the applicant. Representatives of the applicant are here as well. This is in addition to an existing liquor license to match an expansion of the licensed premises, which is the dining room and patio area at the Arboretum Independent Living Facility. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 14 is approved, 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the city council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the city council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the city council rules of order.
Public hearings on agenda items 15 through 17 were held July 30, 2019. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
15 through 17 are approved, 7-0.
The public hearings on agenda items 18 through 28 are today. If you wish to address the council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item or items you wish to address, identify yourself by your name, address, who you represent, and if you are a proponent or opponent.
Can you remove item 24?
We will be removing item 24. Going once, twice.
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, 68132. I am an opponent of item number 25. That's still on the agenda.
Okay.
I think the public needs to have more discussion and explanation about these programs. I read the paper every day, and I don't recall hearing anything about the home program funds for rehabilitation and resale, eventual purchase and sale, qualified and low-income people that are at least at or below 80% of the median income, et cetera, $660,000. Somehow that involves my property taxes, I would think. There were some city taxes somewhere along the line. And I think if we look very simply at it, comic book style fashion, that maybe that seems to me like that puts some people at an advantage over other people. It doesn't say that these people that are doing this have real estate licenses, but it raises some questions. For example, is the Omaha Land Bank involved? What exactly is the Omaha Land Bank? If you go to the websites and look things up, it's a municipal organization. special Omaha Municipal Land Bank meeting called for August 12th,
Larry,
1890.
I need to interrupt you. You're off
That's
topic.
on the third floor coming up.
You're off topic.
Now, if you go a little further,
Larry, you're out of order.
Community Development Division.
Come back on topic, or you're going to have to declare you out of order and have you
All right.
removed.
Okay, well, if you look up Omaha Land Bank, there are members of
You're
the
out of order.
council that are involved in it.
Please take a seat.
We'd like to have more openness about that. Thank you.
Are there anyone else wishing to testify as a proponent or opponent on the consent agenda resolutions? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
We need a motion to allow withdrawal on 24. Second. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 29, an ordinance authorizing and directing an issue as additional bonds for the sanitary sewerage system revenue refunding bond, Series 2019, in an aggregate principal amount of $23,500,000. A is an amendment of the whole requested by the Finance Department.
Is there a motion? Oh. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. One public hearing will be held for items 30 and 31, agreements with Heartland Workforce Solutions, the Greater Omaha Workforce Development Area Provider, National Able Network and Dynamic Educational Systems for programs at the Greater Omaha Workforce Development Area One-Stop Center in the amounts of $2,080,000 and $1,275,000.
The public hearing on item 30 and item 31 begins at this time. Is there any proponents?
Good afternoon, Erin Porterfield, 5752 Ames, available for questions.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed. No motion today, just public.
Item 32, an ordinance to approve the Nebraska Commission on Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Fiscal Year 2019 Office of Violence Prevention Grant Program in the amount of $35,000 from July 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2020 to provide funding for human DNA testing.
The public hearing on item 32 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 33, an ordinance to...
Who?
Is this a waste ordinance?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
We'll get there.
Thank you.
Did you sign in?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Item 33, an ordinance to approve an agreement with Douglas County in the amount of $6,923 and to authorize funding from the City of Omaha's fiscal year 2018 School Violence Prevention Program to provide funding for the travel of 3 employees to the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals Conference in 2019 and 2020.
Public hearing on item 33 begins at this time. Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
One public hearing will be held for items 34 and 35. Item 34, an ordinance awarding a contract to FCC Environmental for the Omaha Solid Waste Collections Contract for the years 2021 to 2030 with an estimated annual cost of $22,691,046. A is communication from Mayor Gene Stothert. B is communication from the Public Works Director. C is an amendment of the whole for FCC 3-cart system. D is an amendment of the whole for West Central Sanitation 2-cart system. E is an amendment of the whole for West Central Sanitation 3-cart system. F is communication in opposition. Item 35, an ordinance to amend Section 33-46 to change the number of permanent inhabitants needed in a single unit to exceed the established solid waste limit from 8 to 5.
So before we begin the public hearing, I just have an announcement that there was a sign-in sheet process if you wish to testify on these items during the public hearing. So if you have not signed in and wish to testify, please see the clerk and they'll make sure that you sign in on the right side of the issue depending upon what your perspective is. Item 34 is the contract recommendation for FCC, so we'll begin with the Public Works Department and Mr. Tyler on that, and then we'll go to proponents and those who have signed in. So if Mr. Brazil could be ready. on deck.
Okay. Thank you. Jim Tyler, City of Omaha Public Works. I'm the Assistant Director for Environmental Services, and I've been asked to say a few words on behalf of Public Works. I have a prepared statement. I will submit that to the clerk when finished. The Public Works Department strongly recommends the award of this contract to FCC Environmental. We support the mayor's recommendation, which is to award this contract to FCC Environmental and to award bid alternate 3A, the two-cart commingled with biweekly recycling. To quote a few statements from the mayor, taken from the op-ed that appeared in the most recent Sunday World Herald. The council's decision will impact every Omaha taxpayer for the next 10 to 20 years. Our objective must always be to collect your trash, yard waste, and recyclables on the day of scheduled collection. And when solid waste is not collected in a safe and timely way, public health and public safety are impacted. And I want to reemphasize that, and what I see as the most important point. Public health and public safety are impacted. This contract is about public health and sanitation. This is about making sure we hired the company that demonstrated to the working group and our outside consultant that their bid provided for the adequate number of resources to perform this duty under all conditions. The Omaha Public Works Department, as part of its duties for the City of Omaha, provides for the safe disposal and collection of wastes that are generated by our residents in order to protect public health. If you flush your toilet, if you set out your garbage, the Public Works Department either contracts for or provides for the safe collection and disposal of that waste in accordance with all environmental rules and regulations. Garbage, when left uncollected, can lead to diseases that are common in third world countries. You may think this can't happen in the United States. We're too advanced of a society to have this happen. It's happening this year in Los Angeles. The Public Works Department is not in a position to recommend a company that may or may not be able to provide the services necessary to meet the responsibility of protecting public health and sanitation of our residents. We must recommend the company that we know will deliver this essential service all of the time under all conditions. Our outside consultant, SCS Engineering, who does this work all over the country, recommended FCC as the best, most responsible bid received. The 5-member working group that reviewed all of the information contained in the 4 bids came to the same conclusion. This group included members of the Public Works Department, a representative from the Finance Department, and a retired city attorney. Meetings were held over a period of weeks to come to this recommendation. This was not a split decision. It was a consensus recommendation that we made to Director Bob Stubbe, who in turn passed this recommendation to the mayor. I want to add a few notes about the prices and proposed level of resources required to do the work that we received from the 4 bidders. And I know you've all heard these numbers before, but I just want to say these one more time to reemphasize what we saw and why we made the recommendations we made. Our consultant, SCS Engineering, developed a cost model for each alternate in the bid documents. Their model also estimated the number of trucks required to do that work. SCS's estimate for this alternate was $24,700,000. with 51 trucks to do that work. 3 of these bidders, FCC, Waste Connections, and Waste Management, were within 20% of this estimate and had operational plans that assumed more trucks than the SCS model. FCC came in at 8% below that estimate with 59 trucks to do the work. Waste Connections came in within 1% of that modeled estimate with 65 trucks to do the work. We may think that may have been an error. Their number may have been closer to what the model predicted. Waste Management, the current provider, came in at 18.2% above the estimate with 53 trucks to do the work. Public Works believed that the bids received from these 3 bidders, along with their comparison to the estimated cost for the work by our consultant, gave us a good indicator of what the value of this contract should be. This is in addition to our understanding of costs from our peer communities and a recent bid for the city of Bellevue, Nebraska. All of this data indicated to us what the market value of this contract should be. These numbers showed us that the bid provided by FCC was reasonable and provided more than an adequate number of resources to perform the work. It was close, but on the low end of what the information told us we should be paying for this work. WCS bid for the work 36.9% below the estimate of our consultant and nearly 40% below the average of the other bidders. They have proposed to do this work with 40 trucks. This is a fleet size that is 20% below what the consultant estimated and 25% less than what was proposed by our current provider. Mr. Don Williamson, owner of WCS, who I respect greatly, has stated that they have shown as a company that they are able to come in 20% less than the big national companies. We may have been able to look at them at 20% below, but not at 40% below. The numbers, no matter what you believe about the use of technology and automation, show us that the bid received from WCS did not provide for the adequate resource to perform the contract. Taking a close look at the number of resources that they added in the yard waste bid, that along with the numbers I previously provided, validates our belief that the bids from WCS for this and all other alternatives did not provide for adequate resources to serve the contract. Concerns have been raised by council members on the level of service with the two-cart commingled alternate. In response before you today is the modification to the code to provide free additional capacity to residential households having 5 or more inhabitants. Based on data received from Metro Area Planning, Public Works will budget up to $1 million to cover this additional capacity. We believe based on participation from the pilot study, the cost will be closer to about $250,000. Some of the other things I have in my prepared statement have more to do with how this contract works with the yard waste contract. I'll hold those comments and they'll be provided in my written testimony.
You'll be around for questions.
I'll be available for questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tyler. At this time, we call Mr. Brazil. Next up is Laura Hubbard.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, fellow members of the council. Dan Brazel, 9172 Lay Road, Houston, Texas, FCC Director of Collection Services. So we've been after this process for quite some time, and obviously all of us have had a lot of conversations throughout that process. And really, I reflect back on the earlier stages of this. I know, our team spent countless efforts coming to the city of Omaha to ensure we were analyzing the city properly and to provide the proper resources and routes needed for the city. When you look at our proposal, we boast 59 routes, which we feel is the proper number to adequately service the city of Omaha, providing residents with the service they expect. So currently we operate in Texas and Florida. A comment has come up in the past that we're a Spanish-based company, and a lot of comments about Spain. Now that is true. However, what we have done over the last year and what we're working on is, as we integrate into the U.S., we have formed 2 U.S. companies, both in Texas and Florida. And if we're fortunate enough to receive the award for Omaha, we would be forming FCC Environmental of Nebraska, which we would headquarter out of Omaha. So really for us, this is, obviously a desirable contract, but really would be a pivotal point for us in the Midwest to build upon future operations and future customer base, ultimately providing more opportunity to Omaha residents for job opportunities in the future. Several months ago, we provided a proposal to Public Works outlining our plan to provide to the city the means in which we could help recycle and have a sustainable solution for removing the current personal containers that are on the street with the residents. Obviously, as the containers, the new 96-gallon carts come in, there's not exactly room for the old containers. The estimate is probably there's 400,000 to 500,000 personal containers in place currently in the city. We have a solution for that through experience and a vendor partnership where we can provide at no cost to the city, allowing a sustainable solution to help recycle those materials and ultimately help the city out. I've spent the last 3 months roughly working with Waste Management. I have a relationship relating back, but for me and for our company, we know that the transition is vital. And obviously, we don't have the award, and obviously that's up in the air, but we know that starting early on that is key for us. So our goal as FCC, and if we're fortunate enough to obtain this contract, is to transition as many employees as we possibly can from Waste Management. So I've had extensive conversations with local leadership as well as senior leadership overseeing this current contract to express our interest in that partnership and a smooth transition for everyone, including the residents of Omaha, to focus on that staffing piece, as we know that's a pivotal key component to this contract. Lastly, I'm in front of you today as the Director of Collection Services for FCC. We've all had a long journey together, and I'm here asking for your support with the proposal that's in front of you from the mayor and endorsed by Public Works, and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. And you'll be around for questions.
I will, yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Laura Hubbard. Next up is Danny Stanton.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and council members. My name is Laura Hubbard, 145 Glenwood Valley Drive, Harmony, North Carolina. I'm Director of Municipal Sales for Toter. We're a cart manufacturing company that has provided millions of carts across the U.S. for over 50 years now. There's 2 keys to a really successful collection contract. The first is service, and we're confident that FCC is going to be able to provide you guys in the city of Omaha with the service level that they need. We have seen FCC approach the service levels, and we know that in a startup such as this, they're going to handle that in a way that is planning, as Dan mentioned. They're going to go in. They've worked with us extensively on this project. We're currently working with them on a project in Florida right now in Palm Beach for 110,000 homes. And we know that they're going to provide that level of service that the residents of Omaha needs. The second is quality equipment. Carts are the one item residents touch daily. If there are issues with the carts, the city's going to hear about it. Ultimately, the contractor is going to be responsible for fixing those issues. But you're still going to hear about it because your residents are going to be complaining. You're still going to hear those complaints. So it's really vital that you have a good product out there in the streets. Toter is the only cart manufacturer that proposed a 15-year body warranty and a 12-year warranty on all the other components. Our carts are 100% recyclable at the end of their useful life and manufactured using up to 50% recycled content, which is the highest amount of recycled content proposed by any cart vendor to the city of Omaha. The city has chosen black for the cart bodies, which is also lends itself to be the most amount of recycled content that can be used. And the amount of recycled content in our carts that would be provided to the city of Omaha if selected would not compromise the integrity, durability, service life, or the warranty of the carts. Because FCC has selected Toter as a cart vendor, the large 96-gallon as well as the small 48-gallon would come from the same manufacturer. That would give uniformity and a nice, clean, consistent look on the curb. You can be assured that FCC is investing for the residents of Omaha to ensure that they have a cart that is easy to use, safe, and will provide lasting benefits for 15 to 20 plus years. Thank you.
Danny Stanton. Or Donnie, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and members of the City Council. My name is Donnie Stanton, and I live at 2302 South 178th Street in Omaha. And I have a transportation and logistics background with about 26 years experience, mostly in transportation. And I've been following this contract and going back and forth for a few months looking at this as a resident. And reading the articles in the World Herald, watching some of the city council meetings as well, what I've learned from these articles is that each company has proposed their bids based on the number of homes collected per truck. It appears from my analysis that Waste Management, Waste Connections, and FCC Environmental were pretty much in line with each other, claiming that each truck can collect roughly 700 homes per day per truck. West Central Sanitation, however, claims that they can collect over 1,000 homes per day per truck, if my analysis was correct. I know from personal experience in this industry that putting that much more work on a truck will result in poor service, which ultimately impacts the residents of Omaha. The facts, based on my analysis, FCC Environmental states that they will street 59 trucks per day, as stated earlier today, and will collect roughly 674 homes per day per truck. Omaha's current contractor, Waste Management, collects roughly 763 homes per day per truck, and Waste Connections came in stating they would collect 707 homes per day per truck. West Central Sanitation claims that they will street 40 trucks a day and will collect 1,074 homes per day per truck. As a resident of Omaha, I personally like the 2-cart plan that allows for unlimited seasonal yard waste versus the 3-cart plan. As we all know, yard waste is really heavy in the spring and fall months. That's where the bulk of our yard waste comes from, which means that a resident such as myself would not have to find a place to put this third 96-gallon cart for just in my garage or wherever it may be for just those times of the year. The other issue I see with a 3-cart plan is that any excess yard waste that I would generate and would not fit into this 3-cart plan would require me, if I'm not mistaken, to purchase a sticker at the cost of $2 per bag to be removed from my property. The seasonal unlimited option affords me, a resident, the opportunity to get rid of all my yard waste when it's needed without having to purchase stickers for additional bags. Again, from the articles that I have read and the analysis that I have performed, FCC has the experience in many other similar-sized cities to Omaha, and West Central Sanitation's largest city is Mankato, Minnesota. The number of homes in Mankato is approximately the size of one council district in Omaha, or if my analysis is correct, roughly 20,000 homes. West Central, in my opinion, would have to double in size to support this contract, and the residents of Omaha are not willing or should not be willing to take that risk when it comes to the service of their trash. We've been experiencing these service delays enough with our current waste contractor. To me, FCC Environmental seems to have the required experience and resources to be successful in the city the size of Omaha.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Tim Teets. And that's the last proponent who is signed in. If you wish to testify as a proponent, last chance to sign in with the clerk, right over here to my right.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Teets, 17259 Pine Street. As a resident, I want a consistent and simple, straightforward waste program. I do not want trash day to make my neighborhood look messy and unruly like it does today, with multiple types of trash cans, bins, and bags strewn everywhere on the street. I'm here to support the FCC 2-cart plan with the unlimited seasonal waste because that is the one I feel has the best chance to succeed in giving Omaha a regular and consistent waste collection program without the confusing sticker program or an extra cart. I've worked for and with many companies throughout the Midwest focusing on the efficient flow of material through transportation, logistics, and distribution operations. I've been trained and certified in lean manufacturing and Six Sigma practices and procedures. The training focuses on real-life metrics that tell the true story of efficiency. The reason I'm speaking today is that from what I've read and analyzed, the discussion in the discussion about this bid, a big red flag jumped out at me, and the number of trucks to support the Omaha bid. Waste Management at 763, Waste Connections at 707, FCC at 674, and West Central at 1,074. If there was evidence of this type of efficiency in cities the size of Omaha, I would be extremely impressed. But since West Central's largest city is Mankato, it begs the question if they're truly prepared for the volume they are trying to be more than 50% more efficient at than the companies who have experience in cities this size. I do not think it is wise for the city to take on a substantial risk on a 10-year contract for an unproven entity. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more proponent. If you tell me your name, you can sign later. Bo Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan. And your address, too.
You bet. Thanks, Mr. President and council members. Bo Sullivan with Rared Pacific, 7800 100th Street, Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. And so a little bit about Rared, who we are, what we do, how we've partnered with FCC across the country, not only in Texas rollouts, as well as Florida, from not only a cart and technology standpoint, but having that from a seamless project of a one-stop shop. So Rared Pacific, going on 106 years being in business. It's a family-owned and operated. So started with the wooden milk crate, evolved to injection molded plastics. Cool story, we were Pepsi's Vendor of the Year in 2011. So we helped them decrease their operational costs of having a pallet drop at a gas station, have to unload it, take it in. So from safety, operational times, we helped them save over $10 million operationally. So that's where proponent of FCC, of the partnership we've had with them, however that looks in this project, that their support. And what's unique with us is we have 7 different manufacturing facilities. So when you talk about a project of 300,000, potentially 450,000, it's critical. If a machine goes down, you have other places to pull from. What's really cool is we have one less than 200 miles away from you guys down in DeSoto, Kansas. So kind of a cool story from how we can recycle, products go back in that, and it's locally produced to you guys. Also,
And if you could, I don't quite understand what you're saying your company does.
carts and technology solution based. So example I was going to highlight is City of LA and Toronto. We provide carts. So we actually had a 10-year contract with City of LA and Toronto. LA just got extended for another 10 years, and Toronto was extended last year for another 10 years, and that's gone beyond just the carts. City of Toronto, we perform all the cart maintenance for them. So just a little highlight of what we've done and how we have endorsed FCC in the past.
And you're, in addition to the totes,
Correct.
Ms.
Yep.
Hubbard's.
So giving the city visibility into the service verification, so when those carts get dumped, and then also from a work order, because it's critical in your situation, the city having the capital expenditure for the assets, and how can you reduce that over time, and having that visibility of those assets getting moved, so that way down the line when you do have warranties, you have visibility not into the warranty process, but then understanding if you guys have to pay for future carts, making sure that's getting managed in a proper way and you have that visibility.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Please.
Yeah, it's REHRIG, R-E-H-R-I-G, and then Pacific.
Just like the ocean.
You got it.
Or the street, if you're
Yep,
from Omaha.
that's right.
All right, well, thank you
Any
for coming
questions?
and your testimony. You'll be around if anyone has questions.
Absolutely. And other thing highlight I thought was pretty cool was out of the 4 people that submitted, we were part of 3 out of the 4.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move to the opponents who signed in and begin with Don Williamson. Welcome back, Mr. Williamson.
Mr. President, can I submit comments to the city clerk, please?
Of course. If anyone has statements, by the way, that you brought with you that are prepared, you can always hand them to the clerk and they'll be a part of the record.
Mr. President and City Council of Omaha, once again, we appreciate having been part of this process almost from the beginning. And I've enjoyed the discussions I've had with many of you and the opportunity to meet you personally. We've been humbled to have this chance, and it's kind of a chance of a lifetime for our company, so we do appreciate it a lot. We've put a lot of effort and intention into our proposals for Omaha, and we know that we can be successful in them. Our reputation is our most prized and hardest earned asset, and we protect it and keep it unblemished, and we will continue to do that. We've worked hard to demonstrate that our proposal is viable, and we've gone to the effort of showing you and trying to demonstrate to you how we can do that. Our proposal was also vetted by HDR Engineering as an act of the city to do that, and we appreciate that effort that the City Council and the city took and Public Works to prove our plan. HDR did find us to be able to have a plan that was successful. They did not find anything that said we would fail, and so we appreciated that evaluation. We've also provided letters from our banks to assure the finances that were necessary to provide all the assets and the real estate necessary to provide for the contract for the City of Omaha. We've submitted bonding sureties from 2 separate surety companies, And they don't issue those assurances lightly. They have a vested interest in our success in the city of Omaha. Before we submitted our proposal, we took the time and the effort to come to your community, spent many weeks here and time, and I was on some of those trips along with Ray and Taylor, and we had other operational people work with us. We took the time to go through the troublesome alleys, they're called troublesome or tricky, through on-street parking areas, and we went through with actual measuring devices to make sure that our plan would succeed before we submitted it to the city. We have full confidence that our plans will work and will work to our expectations. We even went to the trouble, and I shouldn't say the trouble, but we took the opportunity to bring carts to town, and we worked with Rare Pacific to bring carts to the community. And we spent a day on July 11th, which some city council members were able to fit into their schedule, and we appreciate that. And we tried to demonstrate how our equipment, the types that we have specified for the city, would work in alleys that are difficult. These alleys and these sites were picked by the Public Works Department as typical venues that we would see in our operational plan in Omaha. And we showed, I believe, and demonstrated that we could do that with the type of equipment we've specified. We're not the lowest bid because we're cheap or because we're ignorant of what it takes to service the city of Omaha. We are celebrating our 40th year of a growing company every year, and it is our specialty to come into cities that have trouble with the solid waste plan, and we succeed in every one we've ever done, and we would do the same for you. We are the lowest bid because we've been intentionally different in our approach. We've intentionally utilized more technology and more automation. It's not technology or automation that we're unfamiliar with. It's technology and automation that we currently use in our operation every day, and we have many years in our track record of using it. It's not new for us. We believe that our bid was the most responsive to the initial RFB. If one were to look at the conditions and the projections of the RFB, we believe our bid and know our bid most closely reflects what was anticipated in that bid. We've provided the most efficient and most automated method of collection available for the city of Omaha. Our method would be safer for drivers and would bring a better environment for the drivers and operators every day than to what they currently experience in the current conditions with which they're asked to perform for the city of Omaha in the current method of collection. It's important that whatever contract the city of Omaha takes up and enters into, that it provides the kind of conditions they're going to keep drivers happy and operators being able to work at their top efficiency and to come home every day satisfied, not only that they got a job done and made a paycheck, but they made the city happy and satisfied. If there's anything that drives a man or a woman every day to succeed, it's to know that they can put forth their best effort and come home at night feeling good about the job they've done. And that's the kind of company we built, and that's the kind of company we would propose to build in Omaha. Our bids have been consistent in their pricing. We believe that our 3-cart 1A option for yard waste, as originally contemplated by the RFB issued by the Public Works Department, is the best option for yard waste collection in the city of Omaha. It includes permanent assets and personnel, not seasonal or not rented, not temporary workers, but permanent year-round. We think we see the importance of that today because it's very hard to get a CDL driver, number one. It's almost impossible to get a CDL driver to work for you for 6 weeks of the year. They're looking for permanent work, and they're looking for a place where they can put down roots. Our yard waste proposals are permanent workers, permanent assets, not a rented fleet. We offer 35 weeks of separated yard waste service, not just 8 weeks or 12 weeks a year. And I'm sure if you did an assessment of people around Omaha, you would find that they're producing yard waste even in the middle of July or the middle of August as they trim their bushes or a storm comes through and there's yard waste that comes down. Our proposal also is a guaranteed 10-year that reflects the contract with trash and recycling collection. It's a 10-year guaranteed yard waste service, not just a 5-year guarantee that is the current supplemental yard waste proposal that will be before the council coming up. I don't know if this overhead is working or not.
They'll turn it on for you.
Would they please?
Give it a second.
And
it'll come on.
I should have probably asked for that. And there's one thing that has come up as we've reviewed the supplemental yard waste plan, and I don't know if I can get that quite screened for you, but let me try to move it for you. And what I did is just showing you that The new supplemental yard waste plan anticipates the use of yard waste bags that are compostable. They're a very good product. We've used them in the past. There's nothing wrong with them. They are compostable. But there's one thing that needs to be recognized by the City Council as they anticipate moving to a supplemental yard waste plan. The use of that plan, unlimited or whether it be 10 or 20 bags, anticipates the use of these bags. And these bags, they said, are very functional, they're very good, but there is a cost to them. The cheapest ones I can find in the city of Omaha are about 45 cents a piece. And I just want to let the city know that the use of the third yard waste cart per year, would, over a 35-week period, would save the residents of Omaha nearly $7 million a year, or roughly $47 per household each year, just in unneeded packaging costs. These yard waste bags are good, but they are a package. They are something we don't reuse. It is compostable, but it is an expense. It takes resources to make them. Carts do too, but frankly, carts have a life of sometimes 20 and 30 years. We know because we've had carts for over 30 years that are still in service today. And if we were to work out the financial formula for that, you'd find that the carts would be much cheaper for the environment and the resources for using them than these yard waste bags. But I do think that this is something that the city needs to anticipate and think about when they talk about what type of yard waste plan or collection plan you're going to use and enter into. West Central Sanitation also saves the city of Omaha $2 million a year, not counting this yard waste expense by the city residents. But just in our plan is we save the city $2 million per year, which is $20 million over the life of the contract. That $20 million is more than the city of Omaha pays for 1 year with your current vendor Waste Management. That's a recognizable savings, and I think it's important with the needs of the city budget. It's important that the assets for collecting yard waste in Omaha be owned and be permanent. This is important, and this is what part of our three-cart option 1A provides. For a city the size of Omaha, it's too risky to accept anything less. We've discussed the city's yard waste needs with individuals at both Deffenbaugh and with Waste Management. We, being in the business as long as we have, and of some of our other staff and personnel have worked with people from those companies in the past, we had people there that have worked with the city of Omaha, and they told us what the needs were for these contracts. We're confident what we've proposed is more than adequate. In summary, West Central Sanitation is the only bidder whose operational plan has been independently vetted by an independent engineering firm, HDR. West Central Sanitation is the only bidder who's provided the financial assurances above and beyond what was requested in the bid documents. West Central Sanitation is the only bidder to have physically demonstrated our proposal in Omaha streets and alleys with real trucks. And we also continue to be the lowest bid. We believe we've gone above and beyond in our efforts. If chosen to service Omaha, the effort we have put forth in pursuit of this contract is the same effort you can expect from us and from me personally every day. We would provide the service the city expects, and we would satisfy the problems that you've had recently. Thank you, Mr. President and City Council.
Next opponent is Spencer Magruder, followed by Stephen Italis. Again, if you wish to speak as an opponent and have not signed in yet, there's a sign-in process today. You can sign in with the clerk.
Spence Magruder, 1524 Cummings. I stand here today as a taxpayer and a safeguard to the integrity of this procurement process. The integrity of this procurement process is codified by the Municipal Code of Ordinances and the Home Rule Charter. My problem is that, and I've written 3 letters to the council regarding this, when you look at when you go to the Code of Ordinances, it clearly states that, yeah, please. It clearly states that all bid proposed contracts.
That up a little bit so we can read it. Okay.
The ordinance section is 10-105, and it refers to the bidding process, okay? And that first sentence, it refers to section 5.6 of the Code of Ordinance, of the Home Rule Charter. In that Home Rule Charter, it sets out policies and procedures for the purchasing department. And in those procedures, it states that the bids are to be open in public, and be the basis for award, okay? That last phrase, be the basis for award, is at the heart of what my concern is. When you look at the bid tabulation from when the bids were open in public, the purchasing department recorded the prices. And for FCC, they recorded a price for option D, or package D, of $40 per yard waste sticker, okay? When the transmittal letter from this administration to this body comes, that $40 per yard waste sticker is now $1.98 per sticker. On the draft ordinance that you're going to be voting on, it's $1.98 per sticker. My question is, how do you have a procurement process that can avoid being challenged in a court of law or by another bidder that didn't have the same opportunity that FCC had to change their bid? Because that's what happened. After the bid, somehow it went from $40 a yard waste sticker to $1.98. And per our home rule charter, it says that the bid that was open in public is the basis for award. So that's my question. I would like an answer to that if you could.
Thank you. Mr. Atalis, you're up next, and followed by Larry Storr.
Stephen Italis. I live at 1018 South 36th Street. I am a former biology teacher, a former county board member, and a trustee of a small village, and been involved with solid waste for 50 years. And I'm not here as an opponent. I'm here as a proponent for the low bid. That's what we worked on in Winnebago County, Northern Illinois. And if the bidders were bona fide, we went with the low bid. It seemed the American way, but maybe not the Spanish way. It would seem that from the communications in the paper that the mayor has already made up her mind. The 20-year reference is even beyond the reasonable 10-year reference, which is much longer than should be considered with the rapidly changing markets for recyclables and the need for proper recycling. The recycling program, as we know it, has run its course. It is dead. The CEO of our recycling program is asking for more money. It is not making money. It won't make money. If you want to remove the most valuable components from the waste stream, put on a bottle bill. That'll get the cans and bottles out. But the inclusion of yard waste and fiber, cardboard, paper in a landfill is actually a positive component. It stabilizes the landfill. And if you want to know what to do with the land afterwards, put a solar farm on top of it. It isn't good to build on. County Stadium in Milwaukee was built on a dump and they had to tear it down. But there are uses for open land. And I would suggest that at the least, cut a contract with a 5-year limit so that you can get a second chance and do it right. I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Storr, followed by Luis Jimenez.
Do I have to repeat my name again?
Yes.
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. I live in the 68132 area. There are some older homes, some larger homes, some smaller homes, some homes on hills, some homes with alleys. There are some younger people, there are some older people. I myself don't look forward to a 96-gallon, now 2 of them, and probably 3, carts. My property is not going to handle that. Are you going to fine me for leaving carts out on the front lawn? I can't handle that, particularly on a snowy, icy day. Are you going to reject my claims for injuries when I fall on the ice trying to move a 96-gallon cart? How about my neighbor that's 93 years old? How about some of the kids that are helping parents that are injured or incapable? Are you going to deny those claims like we do with potholes? Because you're surely going to have them. Some people are just going to not do it. So are you going to take their property because they didn't comply with a city ordinance? Is that part of a redevelopment plan maybe for East Omaha? Could be. We need to ask some of those questions. Chicken Licken said the sky was falling and the road runner never could catch, the fox could never catch the road runner. But they kept coming up with all these schemes from the Acme Toy Company. And I mean, you know, why don't you have 3 of those carts sitting out here so people can see how large those are? And then imagine it being filled with yard waste. I don't think so. Not when I'm maybe 80 years old. Not when I'm probably only 2 years older than now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jimenez, followed by Kathy Jeffers.
Luis Jimenez, 2205 North 24th Street. Good day, council members. Residents want their trashed picked up, but now they also care what happens next. So I appreciate the hard work conducted to get to where the contract is today with changes. And the process has been good. There's been a lot of discussions from different individuals coming together to have those discussions, I believe. But even though the contract is provided by the mayor's office, today here, it is city council property. Once approved and implemented, I'm not convinced you're going to take responsibility for the service. Thank you.
Kathy Jeffers, followed by David Corbin, Sierra Club.
Kathy Jeffers, 5706 South 173rd Avenue. Thank you, Mr. President Jerriman, as well as the council members for listening to us. I am speaking on for Omaha Together, One Community Environmental Sustainability Team. We have again been asked whether we want to continue to separate yard waste to produce Omagro despite the known additional costs. OTOC from the beginning, over 2 years ago, supported separating garbage from yard waste to be placed in a covered container and to be processed at the Omagro composting facility. It will prolong the usefulness of the limited amount of space in the landfill. As a master gardener for the University of Nebraska Extension Program, I teach people to use integrated pest management practices, such as amending their clay soil with in a regenerative way to build healthy soils with this compost. The overwhelming public voice was spoken on April 23rd at your city council meeting, and a large support wanted the continuation of composting yard waste, and that's why we're here today to reiterate our program. Let's not be short-sighted at the 10-year garbage contract with composting. Let's not be short-sighted, but look at the new 10-year garbage contract with composting, yard waste, as well as recycling biweekly as part of the big picture solution for helping our city be a leader for other cities to follow. Thank you for your time and selecting this solid waste contract that will be the best for Omaha for us and future generations.
Thank you. Mr. Corbin. Mr. Sullivan, did you want to speak on this one too? You're with both companies, I presume? Correct. Okay. You'll be next.
David Corbin, 1002 North 49th Street. I'm the chair of the Nebraska Sierra Club. I'm also a retired public health professor for UNO and also teach at Creighton. My main reason for being here today on behalf of the Sierra Club is our concern for methane in the landfill. The more organic materials you put in there, the more methane is released into the atmosphere. It's a potent greenhouse gas. The American Public Health Association, who I've represented Nebraska there for over 2 decades, puts climate crisis at the top of their priorities. Young people, in a Yale study, 70% of adults 18 or younger say they're worried about global warming compared to only 56% of those 55 plus. There's a group called Republican, which basically puts climate change on their top priority. This is Republicans who are young Republicans who are talking about facing the issues of the climate crisis. Recently it was announced a Blueprint Nebraska to try to entice 43,000 young people to come to Nebraska to live and work. In that, they do not mention anything about the youth. There is something about transportation. There's nothing about the fact that young people want to live in a sustainable community. We must have the 3 carts. The longer you can have the yard waste collected, the better it is for the environment. The one thing, I know that there's something in the contracts about education, and you talked about it at length when we were talking about the plastic bag ban, about the need for education. I hope whatever you decide, that part of that education is talking about what is going to be the climate in the next 10, 20 years, and this is a long contract. If you think that you can capture most of that, that is not true. Yes, you can capture it, and you can create energy like OPPD is doing right now. I just came from their meeting today. But the majority of it does not get captured. The majority of it goes into the atmosphere. It's a potent greenhouse gas. I'm not here to speak on favoring one company over the other, but favoring a 3-cart system, and the longer you can collect that yard waste separately, the better.
Thank you, Mr. Corbin. Mr. Sullivan, followed by Mary Ruth Stegman.
Again, Bo Sullivan with Rare Pacific. Again, proponent for West Central, so as President alluded to, we're in support of both companies, so I just want to reiterate our support for them as we partnered with them for over 20 years. And again, Rare is the only company that can be a one-stop shop from production, delivery, and technology all under our roof. And just wanted to highlight our goal is to help you guys maximize your return on invested capital, help the hauler decrease their operational costs, and, end of the day, make sure the residents of Omaha have a smooth transition, as we know a lot of eyes are going to be watching this project.
Thank you. Mary Ruth Stegman, followed by Alan Vavolka.
President Jerem and City Council members, my name is Mary Ruth Stegman. I live at 4512 Pierce Street. I have communicated with you before about the solid waste contract. I understand that today you will vote for one of the 4 bids from FCC or West Central Sanitation. It is unclear how the mayor's plan for the number of weeks of unlimited yard waste collection coordinates with these bids. It is also unclear whether there will be 12, 8, or some smaller number of weeks of unlimited yard waste collection. I will just reiterate our position that we oppose any yard waste being sent to the landfill. In a June 11, 2019 letter to you, Mayor Stothert wrote, quote, "A primary reason to offer separate collection is to produce Omagro," unquote. OTOC's position is that the primary reason for separate collection is to reduce methane produced by decomposing yard waste from the landfill. Methane in the first 20 years is 72 times better than carbon dioxide at infrared heat retention. And it is heat retention in the atmosphere and oceans that is significantly contributing to the climate change that we are all now experiencing. While it is true that methane collection system to produce electricity at Pheasant Hill landfill, much of the methane is not collected. And we understand that there are no plans or funds to expand this methane collection system in view of the greatly increased amount of methane that will be produced if yard waste is deposited in the landfill, as it now is, for the next 10 or 20 years. OTOC's Environmental Sustainability Action Team urges you to select a solid waste contract that does not send yard waste to the landfill. And I also would like to thank you for all the time and effort that you have spent in considering this next solid waste contract.
Thank you. Mr. Vavolka, followed by what is currently our last registered opponent, Mr. Michael O'Hara. So if you are an opponent and wish to speak and have not signed in, last chance to do so.
Alan Vavolka, 3719 Hamilton. It strikes me as inappropriate that a city the size of Omaha should even consider not having a recycling program and a yard waste program. It's very short-sighted. If you decide to be that short-sighted, my suggestion would be to agree with the suggestion that the contract term should be shortened, because this is not a forward-looking approach to dump yard waste in the landfill and possibly to throw the recyclables in there with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Hara, followed by our last speaker, Mr. Fonensteel.
Hello, Michael O'Hara from the Nebraska chapter of the Sierra Club, 6035 Binney Street. Public health and safety is one of your most important duties. In fact, it might very well be the most important. It is so important, it contains a rare statutory mandate. You shall pick up all yard waste, you shall pick up all solid waste within the city, and do so without a fee other than the property tax in the general fund. Public health and safety is extremely complex. You're dealing with both the immediate and the future, and we would, in the Sierra Club, prefer to have the 3 bins. We're agnostic as to which person is going to pick them up. We're more interested in how you pick up the garbage and what you do with it. We want to have composting of the yard waste to reduce methane, and that also is the state policy, that you compost yard waste as opposed to put it in the landfill. With respect to recycling, China is no longer taking our garbage because it is contaminated. If you use 2 bins, you're going to increase the frequency of contamination of that recycling bin, and that is going to increase the cost of recycling for you. As mentioned in today's paper, the tipping fee requested is at $100, and if you look at the county's tipping fees, they vary, but the more complex the material you're taking, the higher the tipping fee. If you would like to reduce that tipping fee, go to 3 bins as opposed to 2. We'd really urge you to support that. You are stewards of the public dollars, and I would hope you to remember that taxes are the price we pay for society, and you do not want to go on the cheap when you're buying safety and health. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you. Mr. Fonensteel, and we had one more opponent sign in, Jeffrey Picorni. You'll be next.
Hello, TJ Fonensteel, 5906 South 167 Avenue. I'm here on behalf of Students for Sustainability. I'm here to express our concern with the terms of the proposed contract with FCC. It isn't too often that we hear a sustainability advocate argue on behalf of convenience, but under these circumstances, it is essential to maintain the benefits of year-round yard waste pickup and avoid the consequences of illegal dumping. Under the proposed contract, solid waste collection contract, Omahans will no longer be able to utilize the luxury of year-round yard waste pickup. It is true that Omaha sees the majority of its yard waste collections during the seasons of spring and fall, as would any other city. However, it would be false to say that the amount of yard waste collected during the remaining seasons isn't enough to necessitate year-round collections. Just not too long ago, I was woken up at 4 a.m. on Super Bowl Sunday by the sound of a 30-year-old tree crashing on top of our driveway, and by 8 a.m. we had 17 bags ready for the Monday pickup, and with this proposed contract that we would have to find a different way to dispose of those 17 bags. This is an experience shared by many people that have dealt with our Nebraskan winters, and furthermore have not been forced to find other means of disposing the substantial amount of yard waste produced during winter months. And I would like to reiterate what Mr. Corbin of Sierra Club said about the methane gas emissions with disposing of the yard waste bags at the landfill. It is not an efficient way to, there's no efficient way to capture the methane gas and use for energy, and it's much more efficient to just use it for composting. On another note, this contract also includes arrangements for bi-weekly collections of recyclables that will in turn be delivered to First Star Recycling. I hope you guys are all well versed with the current issues surrounding the recycling in Omaha, and are aware of the fact that if the current contract is not renegotiated, recycling services will end and all recyclables will inevitably be sent to the landfill. I hate to say that by the looks of it, there's a strong likelihood that this will in fact happen, and in that circumstance, we will be paying FCC for services that will no longer be able to be fulfilled. So we need guarantees with what will be happening with the recycling system in Omaha before we make a final decision on this contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Picorni?
Jeffrey Picorni, 4969 South 149th Court. I've been a participant in almost every garbage disposal system known to man, from my 5-year-old experience with Jack Seckman in Schuyler, Nebraska. He would give me a ride over to my friend's house, to the Army in Vietnam when they burned everything, to Omaha system, and now I'm here as a 76-year-old representing my 6 grandchildren, aged 10 to 20. What you do today, I probably won't outlive. You're going to, this system, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, and I'll probably be gone. But my grandchildren might say, what did you do at my funeral? What did you do to challenge you folks? You're in an interesting situation here. And I'm not so much a proponent for or against whatever you're doing, except for the fact, a little bit of a critic. You've got HDR, and I'm a little biased because my son-in-law works for them, but you should go to them and say, what's the perfect system for the city of Omaha? And not say, here's what we've done in the past. This is what we need to do in the future to ensure the quality of our life today, 10 years, 20 years, and 100 years down the line. You need to, there should not be really any garbage when everything starts off as something that's pure and unique, whether it's food or metal or whatever. ABCs should not be permitted in the waste stream. Aluminum beverage cans should not be permitted in the waste stream. And I don't know how you stop that. It's just like there's a 75-mile speed limit on the interstate. Not everybody obeys it. 1, 2, 3, 5%. And then if you passed a law against ABCs into the waste stream, maybe 5% of the people would still throw them in there. But you'd get 95 or 90% of the cans, which is the most valuable product that First Tier recycles now. It almost would pay for the system. I'm a student of my garbage in my neighborhood. I walk the streets every Monday morning when they pick it up. Papillion Sanitation does it. And I see things put out that amaze me, that are perfectly good. And I hear the garbage man picking up the sacks, and there's aluminum cans in there. Lots of them. If they can make a noise that I can hear. Now, here again, I'm 76 years old and hearing impaired. But if I can hear those aluminum cans rolling around, it's a sin. It's a sin. And I challenge you folks to go back to the drawing board. I think you're premature today. Go to HDR and say, listen, what is the ideal situation? What is the best garbage collection system in the world? In the world. And say, this is what we're going to do. And it's pay me now or pay me later. It's going to save you money, and it might save my grandchildren's lives. Instead of me, I'm past my due date, 76, probably 4 years or 5 years past the average. Folks live to be 89, and I hope to make it to that. But that's the outer limits. Those 20 to 10-year-old grandchildren are going to be here for 60 years, 70 years, if, in fact, they can survive. You heard the methane testimony today. It doesn't make sense. I don't generate any yard waste to the system. It all goes, if I have some clippings or whatever, I throw them behind the flowers, and in a month, they're dried up and gone. And that's the way it should be. Now, if somebody's really fastidious and has to get rid of their grass clippings, work with that system. Go to HDR and say, what do we do with those people that will not allow one grass clipping on their yard? But I'm not hearing that today. What I am hearing is that you're rejecting the low bid. And their proponent made a good presentation as far as I can see. I try and read everything in the World Herald about waste collection and recycling. Recycling is more of my avocation than garbage, but I'm living in the garbage. I see what my neighbors throw away. Perfectly good stuff. You've got to address that problem first, I would think. Am I hitting my 10 minutes yet?
You could
Well,
wrap up.
the only thing I'll repeat is something that's, I think,
No need to repeat.
is life or death. And the thing is, I don't know what the life expectancy average here is, but there's some young ones here. But you're not going to beat this problem. You've got to come up with the unique solution. And Omaha is the perfect incubator for it. If you didn't have the best engineering firm maybe in the world, in the United States for sure, but in the world, HDR, and they're your consultants. You go to them and say, how do we get out of this mess? How do we do it?
Thank you, Mr. Picorni.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Tyler, did you want a minute of rebuttal?
Thank you. Again, just to reiterate our support of FCC and the two-card alternative, I would like to respond to Mr. Magruder on his point on the
And if you could limit to that.
Sure. On the FCC, what we had with that is we did not define the unit for that bid item, and it was a unit correction. The FCC bid on a larger type of basically yard waste collection vessel. Okay, we did not define the unit. When we went back to them and asked them if they would accept a bid price based on the unit that everyone else bid on, we adjusted it to that price that you all see there. So that
How did the others know the unit size?
It was an assumption on their part that it was that bag that we see on the streets. And it was an assumption on FCC's part that it was something else, and it was a fault on our part to not define the unit.
Thank you.
Yep.
Public hearing is closed. Councilmember Festerson.
Thanks, Mr. President. I want to thank everyone for their testimony here today. I do appreciate it. It's a complicated issue, and it's our largest public contract, so it's important we get this right. And with so many bids and different versions on the agenda, it is hard to unpack all the details here, but I want to take a chance to talk about a few of them today. And I do want to say that for us, a baseline is the effective and timely collection of trash from people's streets and curbsides. To me, that should be a given, but I agree wholly with the testimony today that we need to be thinking much more than just that. We should have the expectation that we're also having an effective environmental program that involves composting and recycling going forward. And so if you have that perspective, and I do, you're not naturally inclined to the two-cart options that are before us here because they commingle, and that's not something I support. I've been very clear about that for several years now. I do want to say something about the council. I think but for the council's involvement, I don't think waste management would have been held to the standard of their contract, which was to separate yard waste, or at least had the heat put on them for that. I don't think many of these bids would have included separate yard waste collection, and I don't think we would have a supplemental bid before us today that deals with separate yard waste collection to consider. So I do think we've made some progress in terms of our position on that. Residents in my district are very concerned still, though, about capacity and composting and separate yard waste. We have a lot of that in my area. And so if you have that perspective, you prefer the three-cart options that we have before us here today, which also aren't perfect, but do better address those situations. And that's because they institutionalize separate yard waste collections and composting, not just in a separate contract. They can be 35 weeks long, not just 8 or maybe 12 weeks. And that third cart can address capacity issues even in the off-season. And I would say the competing proposal to what's been recommended to us today does those things, and is still $2 million less than what's been recommended. So that's something we need to consider. But what I want to drill down into a little bit, Mr. Tyler, if you can come to the podium today, is the supplemental yard waste bid, because without that, to me, the recommendation is a non-starter. And I know that public hearing is not technically until a following week, but I don't think you can have a conversation about this without drilling down on that. And that's really the new item of information we've had in the last couple of weeks. So a few questions for you. Can you just confirm that the supplemental yard waste contract is only a 5-year contract, even though it has the ability to be extended?
That's correct.
And why was the decision made to make it 5 years versus 10 like the rest of the contract?
You know, I'll speak to why the other one's 10, and then I'll come back to why we made 5 for the other one. It's very, we do not like to enter into extremely long-term contracts, except for if we see an absolute need. And there was an absolute need for the larger solid waste contract to have that duration in it. And the reason is that if you have a company coming in from out of town that has to make a substantial investment, they need that long-term view. They need to know that if I have at least 10 years to recoup my funds. When we looked, we truly looked at the yard waste complement as a supplement to that larger contract. We saw it as we saw the 5-year plus 5-year as a long-term demonstration. That was the opinion of Public Works when we put together those bids.
Okay. And now talk about some of the terms of that contract. So from our conversation this morning, I know, should there be a non-performance on the yard waste supplemental contract, there is a $1.5 million bond a company would have to give up if they couldn't perform that work. Right?
So with both contracts, there's a performance bond equal to 1 year of the contract value, and if that contractor cannot perform that work, we'll go to their surety company, the bondholder, and we will tell them that they have to find someone to perform that contract.
And if it didn't go to that extreme, it was just they're missing some cleanups, some pickups like Waste Management has. There's also a fine system in place. Can you describe how that would work?
Sure, system of fines, liquidated damages based on number of complaints. If a number of complaints exceeds a certain number, and I don't have those exact formulas, but if the number of complaints exceeds a certain number, then you take, we have a formula that penalizes or has liquidated damages to that contractor for not performing the work. We also have the ability to recoup funds if our staff has to go out and complete that work for the contractor as well. That's in both contracts.
Okay. And then in terms of the contract itself, let's say a mayor and a contractor no longer wants to perform that work, or just think it's too hard or too expensive or what have you. That supplemental contract could be dissolved by mutual agreement, right?
I'll say that supplemental contract, if the council desires for it to continue, we, Public Works, would have no intention of allowing it to not continue.
Mm-hmm. But in that instance, nothing would come to the council on that. That might be our opinion, but we wouldn't have a say over it.
I'd have to refer that to law.
Okay. I believe that to be the case, which is concerning for me in terms of the permanency I'm seeking inside of a overall trash contract. Let's move on, though, to the supplemental contract's time frame. So the contractor would have be charged with picking up yard waste between 8 and 12 weeks during the year. So that could be as few as 8 weeks, which is essentially 2 months, which could be most likely April and October.
So, yeah, so we have the terms of the contract, I believe, and Jim, help me with this if I get this incorrect. So between April and June in the spring, and between, is it September and November in the fall? Through December. So at our discretion, and this will be a learning experience for us, we're going to decide what period of time we're going to collect in the spring and fall. And we'll kind of make it like the current program we have with the neighborhood cleanup. We decide every year, what that will consist of. So we have to give the contractor 90 days for them to be able to understand what that period will be, and then we'll decide. And that first year we'll use 6 weeks, and we'll understand if that's the period of time that makes sense, or if there should be a lesser period of time, 4 to 6 weeks. That's why we put that flexibility in there, so we could adapt that program over time, kind of right-size it based on how we see things over time. But it's one of these things to where we want to make sure, the first time we never get it exactly right, we could put some flexibility into the length of the season and the timing of the season too for that contract.
And if it was the minimum time necessitated by the contract, which is 8 weeks, is that a long enough period of time to sustain a composting program well into the future?
We believe it is.
Let's shift gears a little bit to the 3-cart discussion. So in the 3-cart option, the third cart presumably is for year-round yard waste. It's not unlimited, but it is year-round. In the off-season, like it is now, that third cart's still available and could be used to then commingle yard waste and/or regular trash, right?
So in that off-season, that cart, if the residents so choose to set it out, if they needed the capacity, that cart would be picked up, and everything in that cart would go to the landfill.
Okay, thank you. I want to call up also the company representatives, if I can, that I spoke to this morning. Maybe Dan first.
Mr. Brazil, come on down.
These aren't surprise questions to them because I met with both of you this morning and asked you these very same questions, but I think it's important to kind of walk through these things some more. So there has been an observation out there on the supplemental yard waste bid that yours was quite low compared to the other bid. And so there's been wonder of, was that just a lost leader in terms of getting the rest of the contract and securing that business? I wanted to give you a chance to address that.
Yeah, so if you look at our 3-cart proposal versus our 2-cart proposal, there was about a $5.5 million difference. So that was us budgeting for 35 weeks of yard waste, adding the additional trucks, people for those collections. When you look at our seasonal approach, we're at about 1.5 million, and it's budgeted for 12 weeks of work. So it very well falls in line with how we budgeted and how we priced our 2-cart versus 3-cart, which we believe, keeps our pricing consistent. It's not a shot in the dark number. It very much aligns with how we prior bid. The other thing I'd say to that is we don't bid things to lose money. We can't do that. We wouldn't be in business if we did. So we feel very confident about our main bid that we know we put adequate resources and adequate cost assumptions in that to make sure we turn a profit. And we did so the same way with our supplemental yard waste bid to be confident that we can operate it for the city's needs, but also at a profitable rate.
And one of the ways you're doing that is with seasonal workers and drivers. And so I want to give you a chance to answer this question too, because we've had sort of a bad experience with our current hauler in terms of not having enough, I think, drivers and seasonal workers, and either not having the ability or not being willing to bring in more resources nationally like they do have to address separate yard waste pickup throughout the city in recent years. And that's, I think, a major aspect of your bid. Can you speak to that a little bit? Your confidence level?
So when we looked at the staffing needs of this supplemental bid and how we would address that, we first looked at, let's hire full-time employees for year-round work. The challenge, in our opinion, is when you have 12 weeks of work but try to hire someone for a full year-round job, now there's not enough work to go around for your people, and you can have frustration within your employees. So the approach we took is we said, okay, our main bid has 59 routes. We have 60 drivers planned plus 10 swing drivers to cover vacations, sick time, adequate training. to cover the city. We know that through proper operational planning and some resource shifts, we can absorb some of the supplemental contract with our current resources that are planned with the contract. The other piece, we'll have an estimated 400 U.S. drivers in operation by the time this contract goes live. So we're looking at that, and I'm saying I could take 5 to 8 employees from other locations that I help oversee and use them as a resource for this contract. We have several people, we've already done some internal polling, that would love to be able to travel a little bit, not all the time, but that experience to go to another community, another site, and operate something like this. We would also look at subcontracting with local vendors. I know initially it sounded like there wasn't a lot of interest from local companies, potentially because of the size or quantity required. However, I think there's a very good opportunity for us to partner with some local haulers, potentially, obviously, at their will, and we could supplement some of the routes that way. And then last is, there are seasonal drivers or temporary drivers, we'd call them. That would be our last resort, but is an option out in the workforce, and something we could look at for this bid.
Okay. And then as one who is skeptical of a shorter-term supplemental bid as opposed to having yard waste collection within the main bid itself, what would you say to convince me of your commitment to picking up yard waste?
Well, I'll tell you that we view the supplemental bid tied to the main contract. It is no benefit to FCC or, quite frankly, the residents of Omaha for us to bid on a yard waste bid that's separate and fail on it. We hope to have a relationship with the City of Omaha through the main contract and obviously the supplemental one. And, I've heard rumors that there's risk we may walk away from the contract or not perform it. But I'll tell you firsthand that if we ever failed on that contract or walked away from it, it would be very pressing and hard for us to ever obtain additional contracts. And as a company that's, focuses on municipal collections and achieving future growth in the Midwest, if we're able to substantiate a site here, that is not an option for us. So it's fully dedicated, but again, it goes back to the fact that we priced that thing where we know we need to make money. It is not a loss to get into the main contract. We did not underbid it. We took a lot of time to study, analyze, and prepare to ensure we're profitable to be able to sustain that work.
Okay. And my last question for now, and I'll ask this of both companies, is something that isn't really an operational question, but it's definitely going to be a concern to people. Should we move to a cart system when they find out the carts are being delivered and they still have their 5 or 10 garbage cans sitting there, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, what do I do with these? Mm-hmm. That could be as many as 500,000 cans in our city, most of which are plastic, so a pretty big plastic issue that I care about. We talked this morning about how would FCC handle that in terms of potential drop-off sites and a vendor you use that could recycle those. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I personally have past experience with my last company as well as FCC does in current contracts that we have taken over in large cities where it has went from a personal container to a 64 or 96 gallon cart. The challenge is always what happens to the residents' containers after they get the new carts, as you just alluded to. So through that partnership, what we proposed a couple months ago to Public Works in a written letter is our plan to ensure the recycling and removal of those carts. So we already have the relationship in place. We've already, started conversations around that to see what it would look like, but already have that company committed and able to help in that situation. So really for us, we would take ownership of that. We would coordinate and we would staff drop site locations, probably majority of those being at our facility that we would end up having. The company would in turn provide the transportation, remove the carts, whether it's plastic, metal. Some older carts have some different materials they're made of, but then find the end market to recycle those products and ultimately provide for a cleaner Omaha.
And that's outside the contracts and the bids here, but just something you're committing today that you would do?
Absolutely, yep. We committed a couple months ago when we wrote the letter.
And your vendor recycles those, doesn't just
Absolutely.
Landfill?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Don, if you would too.
Mr. Williams.
President Jerem, Councilor Festerson.
Thank you. Your name and address just for the record.
Don Williamson, 1423 Fairacre Lane, Southwest, Wilmer, Minnesota.
Great, thanks. So I'll follow up to our conversation this morning too. I wanted to have, In a similar fashion, if there was a criticism of your supplemental bid, it would be, gosh, why was it so far off in terms of the price that was offered compared to FCC in this case? And some of the questions out there were, well, is this just them trying to supplement the first bid if that was underbid by any means or didn't have enough equipment? I wanted to give you a chance to address that.
Yes, sir, thank you. Councilor Festerson, on the supplemental yard waste bid, to get your mind around that, there are some things that changed in it, and that one of them is an unlimited yard waste collection that the supplemental envisions. And an unlimited yard waste bid is truly what it says. It's unlimited. You don't know if you're going to come up with 5 bags or 100 bags at a location. And we all know what our Midwest seasons are like. Spring may hit on one weekend, and it may hit hard and stay. And then if everyone gets busy in their yard work, you have to be able to provide the service that this bid envisioned, and not have the mayor's hotline being called because the yard waste wasn't collected on the given week. So we poured the resources we felt we had to do that, and in our supplemental yard waste bid, it was 30 trucks and the associated staff plus 10% swing drivers to staff those trucks. We were looking at that in the sense of that also, from our experience, we cannot find trained drivers to drive 6 weeks or 4 weeks in the spring and 4 weeks or 6 weeks in the fall. It's troubling to do and almost impossible for us to see happening. The other thing is in the springtime is when the CDL drivers or trained operators are at their peak of demand, and we know that the concrete companies are running, construction companies are hitting their stride, landscaping companies are starting to roll, and it's just a huge demand for the type of person that we need to operate these trucks in the spring, and we did not want to be under the gun not having the people to supply the staff to do it. So to do it right, we felt we had to commit 30 trucks to do that seasonal yard waste plan. And we also, in our training program, you can't just send a person out and say, okay, go to Dundee and pick up 1,000 stops today, and he's never been on the route. It takes 6 weeks of training. At least 6 weeks of training to turn a man loose in a $300,000 to $400,000 truck and expect him to go out there and operate safely and efficiently. You just can't take someone off the street and expect him to do that job. So by the time you take the 6-week plan, add 6 weeks of training, you do that twice a year, our plan calls for permanent yard waste personnel and permanent drivers, operators, and permanent trucks. We did not feel we could satisfy what the city of Omaha demands. We've watched the newspapers for the past couple of years. We've seen the comments. We've seen the public comment on different type of social media. We were not going to fail.
Okay, thank you. And on your 3-cart option, I guess just confirmation that that 3rd cart is for yard waste, separate pickup, 35 weeks out of the year, but then it's still available for commingling or trash in the off-season, right?
Councilor Festerson, yes, that's what the RFB required as given to us by the city, and that's what we bid it to do, yes.
Okay. I want to give you a chance, two more questions. I want to give you a chance also to address my interest in what do people do with their current cans, should the system change, and make sure they're handled in an environmentally responsible way.
Yeah, we'd have to work with the city for education. As we know, education on a cart system would take a comprehensive education system, as I know Public Works is probably preparing for, but also a plan envisioned to take care of those excess containers would be necessary. And it would need to be done in a phased-in plan, the same as the cart delivery would be phased in, because you're not going to phase in 150,000 residents getting all their carts delivered in one day or 1 week. It's going to be a plan of over a few months, maybe 90 days to 120 days, depending on how the Public Works would lay that out and work with our company. So the plan to pick up the carts, most of them are of plastic nature today, but there are still maybe some metal cans. Metal cans would stay in the Omaha vicinity and be recycled at a salvage yard, a metal reclamation yard, if there are still some metal ones out there. The plastic ones would go to a regrinder. A grinder is one that's going to chip that plastic, screen it, sort it, and then it's going to be used for drain tile and for exportable pallets. We work with Rarick Pacific for recycling containers like that. They have partnerships with a grinder in Clinton, Iowa, and one in Missouri. We could use one of those two as a resource. As we do know, Councilor Festerson, and you've heard today from some of your citizens, and you know, in dealing with your recycling contract, getting rid of recyclables right now. There's not a lot of value in that type of plastic in today's market. In fact, there's probably no value in it. So there would be transportation costs. We did not offer that as a totally free option to the city. I'm going to be honest and tell the council that today, but we would certainly be a strong partner with you to get it done as cheap as possible. And if we could work with Public Works and some of their many yards around the town to have collection sites, that would be the most reasonable way to get those off the street and get them recycled. But we would work with you with a plan that would succeed.
And I don't want to put you on the spot in terms of that, but I think it's important for folks to know potential costs that could entail. So I think FCC has committed no cost on that. Are you comfortable giving an estimate of what you think that could cost, the way you'd handle it?
Not knowing the distance that these products would have to travel to be recycled, because that's what the goal would be, to recycle them. Hopefully they would be within a state away to get them recycled. I can't tell you exactly what it would be because I'm not totally prepared for that, but I would envision it could be up to $500,000 because you have transportation costs.
Okay.
We would do our best to make it lower.
Okay. And my final question for now, another question around being low bidder and low bidder by a lot was, gosh, can they really scale up and do this work this fast and perform the service everybody's going to want and demand, frankly? I wanted to give you a chance to address that head on.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Festerson. This is our 40th anniversary. I told you that. We've been a growing company from day one, and we grow for a simple reason. Our customers are happy with us, and every customer has led us to a new customer. And we continue to have that same practice every day. Our company's slogan is "Good Neighbors You've Come to Trust," and we try to make that into our DNA of our company. And we do truly want to be good neighbors. As far as scope and ability to handle Omaha, we do Omaha every day now, but we do it in 21 counties in Midwest Minnesota. We cover 12,500 square miles every week in Minnesota. We service well over 150,000 customers every week in Minnesota. We do it out of 5 locations. We do it spring, summer, fall, and winter. And we've been doing it successfully for a long time. And I think of one thing I can tell you was the 36 or 37 letters of reference we gave you from all the municipalities and counties we serve with ongoing contracts. We still have every contract, every municipal, city, or county contract that we've ever been granted. Every relationship we've ever had with a municipal body of every size, they've continued to work with West Central Sanitation. We've not had one leave us. And if that's not a testimony to us keeping our promises, I don't have anything stronger to give you, Counselor.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Festerson. Mr. Harding.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think Councilman Festerson covered a broad range of questions I was going to ask you, so I'll be brief. I just had a couple follow-up questions maybe on the, even though we'll address this issue later about having the public hearing for the supplemental yard waste pickup. I did have a couple of questions I wanted to ask of the law department, if I could, Mr. Kratz. If at the end of the 5-year initial term, would the ability to extend or exercise the option period be unilateral for both parties, or is it how is that anticipated to be approved?
Paul Kratz, City Attorney. It depends how it's written up. It can be written up in different ways. Sometimes it's...
Is there a draft? I'm sorry to interrupt.
If there is, I haven't seen it, so I can't tell you offhand. Usually it's a mutual agreement that both would agree to extend it.
Okay, well, actually the rest of my questions would then also pertain to the rest of that agreement, but as it relates to pricing and some other things. So if we don't have that in draft form right now, I guess I'll just wait till we see the draft of that to ask those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harding. If there's no one else that wishes to be heard on the council, we would, the chair would entertain a motion on item 34 to postpone the third reading and vote to August 27. A motion on item 35 to lay over the third reading and vote to August 27, and then the clerk, when she reads up the non-action items, will handle the motion on item 53. Roll call.
Festerson.
Yes.
Gray. Harding. Yes. Melton. Yes. Pauls. Yes. Palermo. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Non-action items, items 36 through 53 do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and/or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on an agenda for consideration. And then we have item 53, an ordinance to award the contract to FCC for OPW 53641 for yard waste collection. And I believe there is a motion to postpone the public hearing to the third reading and vote on August 27th, 2019.
No motion to adjourn. No motion. Is there a motion to lay over the public hearing and the vote on item 53 to August 27th? Roll call.
Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes, and we will stand in recess unless there's objection until 6:30, when we'll reconvene for public hearing on the 2020 recommended budget. So.
Hey, Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Here.
An affidavit is on file for the meeting and public hearing, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good evening. Welcome to the public hearing for the 2020 City of Omaha Budget and Capital Improvement Program. We're pleased that you're here to provide input on the recommended budget. Tonight's public hearing is conducted in accordance with the requirements of the Omaha City Charter. To make tonight's proceedings as efficient as possible, we will follow the procedures that have worked well in the past. We'll ask the City Clerk, Elizabeth Butler, to describe the procedures for tonight's hearing.
This public hearing is for the recommended 2020 City of Omaha Budget and Capital Improvement Plan. There is a sign-in sheet at the entrance of council chambers. Please submit the completed form to City Clerk staff. The council president will call you to the podium when it is your turn to speak. We ask that you keep your comments limited to the budget and capital improvement plan and that you speak for no more than 3 minutes. The light at the podium will turn yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining in your time. Please summarize your comments at that point. When the light turns red, your time has expired. If you have written out your presentation, please consider stating your name and address and submitting the presentation for council members to review later. Your written comments will become part of the official record. Please note that council members and other city officials are here to listen to your comments. They do not respond or debate the issues tonight.
After this public hearing, the council's budget review process continues. Council members will consider your input as we continue to review the recommended budget. We are scheduled to vote on the budget at our regular council meeting on Tuesday, August 27th at 2 p.m. I ask everyone to be considerate of your fellow citizens tonight by focusing your comments on the budget, staying within your allotted time, respecting the light system, and being respectful of views that may differ from yours. In addition, we ask that you turn off or silence your cell phones at this time. We'll now commence with the first speaker, who is Andrew Sullivan with Doug Kagan on deck.
Didn't expect to be first, but here it goes. My name is Andrew Sullivan, 7748 Western Avenue. I want to thank the council president and council members for listening to me. I know many of you have heard of me before. I'm actually speaking against the budget simply for one matter. I would expect it to be a little bit more restraint in some of the growth of the government, and that it'd be a little bit more fair to those that are actually paying into it. And right now, there's no proposal in the budget to lower the levy. And right now, a lot of my neighbors have had their property valuations go up $13,000, $20,000, and so forth. And my evaluation just got, my chance to tack evaluation got defeated. But there's one other aspect I want to bring real quickly, is regarding the roads. There's a lot of propaganda and misinformation about some of our roads. We talk about $300 million of unimproved roads. Realistically, 95% of those roads don't need to be improved because they're your dead-end roads, a small, short road with a couple of houses on it. and don't need anything done to them. Franklin Street between 93rd and 96th, gravel road. No one's worried about it. Why? Only a few cars go across it. If there's a hole, a bag of gravel takes care of it. Then you got a street like Western Avenue, the street I live on. It gets paved on one section, and in another section it gets concrete, and then the other section gets completely ignored. And so a lot of us neighbors can't figure out what's the strategy here on the roads, and it gets confusing. I've often suggested that Western Avenue just be cut off at Cold Creek Road. It'd make the neighborhood quiet and would reduce costs and expenditures. Then you got a third example of a road, Shamrock Road between 84th and 90th Street. It's one of the unimproved roads, but it's a screecher road. And what I mean by that is it's got an open drainage sewage, it's got chuck holes in it, and because it's between a school, a church, and a mall, the Countryside Village, lots of people drive over it. So you could fix 99% of the roads, but if any one of them drive over Shamrock Road, they say Omaha roads suck. That road's been dilapidated for months on the northern side of it. On the eastern side, not so bad. But that's the thing that causes alarm and causes people to scream for more expenditures on road. Realistically, if the Public Works Department and the Planning Department strategize a bit better, we really wouldn't have to spend much more money on the roads. We would fix those roads that cause the most problems and most complaints. And I would hope the council focus on that. Again, we know we have to pay for some of this stuff. I would expect, though, in some areas, we really spent more than we needed to. And I hope the council will take a view of some of those areas in the budget of those expenses. Thank you.
Thank you. The light system's malfunctioned, so I've asked the Vice President to assume a responsibility for this meeting. He's now more important than ever if you're a speaker, because he has this, it's 3 minutes. And he'll start once you finish with your name and address.
Good evening, Doug Kagan.
I'm sorry, Doug. Kate Kelly's next.
Okay. Good evening, Doug Kagan, 416 South 130th Street, representing Nebraska Taxpayers for Freedom. We see many positives in the mayor's budget. It concentrates additional spending on necessary basic services, specifically in the police and fire department budgets. Expanded neighborhood cleanups and fall cleanup, savings from increased use of online payments and transactions. The law department is saving money by settling cases out of court, thus not requiring police time to testify. Street lighting expenses will fall 5% every year because of increased use of LED lights. The city council and several city departments saving money through employee attrition. These are all good things. The mayor has shifted additional employees to lower cost health insurance plans that feature health savings accounts and has moved more employees to high deductible health care plans with increased employee premium percentages. Costs dropped by $1 million for employee and retiree health care costs. Insurance costs per employee dropped in several departments. Lower costs projected for retiree supplemental pensions. City bonded indebtedness is much lower than the maximum 3.5% allowed. City departments are collecting private funding for services, for example, funds collected to plant trees in the parks. Police body cameras and increased mental health and crisis intervention training and an upcoming anonymous reporting system funded by private contributions and grants, saving more taxpayer dollars. The city finally will have a long-range plan for street repair and renovation. My Toyota is overjoyed. Although this budget does not raise the property tax levy, a percentage of citizens receive valuation increases. If the city does not lower its property tax levy, these citizens will pay higher property taxes even though your levy is the same. So consider cutting more from the budget. The convention and tourism department budget would rise, although sales are increasing, a lower projection for increased booking of hotel rooms. We are not competing well with similar cities regarding tourism, according to the department chief. Although this department generates more money than it spends, local businesses benefiting from this effort should pay some of the costs in this department budget. We advocate eliminating or temporarily suspending specific expenditures not germane to city government, particularly from community service programs. Eliminate funding for holiday lighting, community development support, neighborhood alliance support, and a truancy prevention program, among others. These entities can subsist on private contributions and grants. Finally, we have budget suggestions for council and mayor. eliminate longevity pay, which is spiraling, purchase supplies with other jurisdictions through interlocal agreements, and worker compensation payment schedule to rise, so solicit interlocal agreements with adjacent jurisdictions to create a larger pool. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Kelly, followed by Aaron Feichtinger.
Good evening, council members. My name is Kate Kelly, living at 4717 North 80th Street. I'm a constituent of Councilman Festerson. I'm a senior at Mercy High School, and I am here today with Students for Sustainability. I am here to urge the members of the council to support the continuation of recycling in Omaha through a renewed contract with First Star Recycling, which is currently not renegotiated in Mayor Stothart's proposed budget. According to Public Works, Omaha residents recycled 16,973 tons last year. This residential statistic does not include businesses and schools in the Omaha area that consider recycling a valuable part of their waste improvement. Truthfully, Omaha is a green city, and every year we are moving faster in that direction. Major sustainability-focused businesses operate in the Omaha area, such as Veritas Group and Hillside Solutions, not to mention environmental organizations and local stores and coffee shops that make it a priority to care for our shared home. The proposed changes to the City of Omaha's recycling contract with First Star would require an extra $1 per month for each household, or $1.7 million a year. This is the true cost of the waste we produce, and we must stay committed to disposing of it in a just and proper manner that does not destroy where we live. If anyone in this room bought a coffee or a pastry for breakfast this morning, congratulations. You have paid, I am guessing, between 5 and 6 months worth of recycling for your household. Furthermore, $1.7 million out of Omaha's annual budget is minute compared to what we spend elsewhere. For example, the current renovations to Omaha's Jean Leahy Mall are costing taxpayers $3 million each year. I believe that recycling, like investing in public spaces, will lead to growth and development in our city in the coming years for under half the price. The more we are able to recycle and educate our youth about the importance of recycling, the better it is for our public health and planet. A major value of many young people in Omaha, including those here today, is environmental health and the efforts of our city to be sustainable. No one wants to live in a place that values profit over people. It is an incentive for young people to stay in Omaha for schooling and careers when they see a pattern of environmentally sustainable action. I would also like to remind you that First Star Recycling currently employs over 100 people, 100 citizens that are at risk of losing their jobs unless the City of Omaha decides to prioritize and invest in our local recycling. I close by again urging this council to listen to their constituents and the needs of our city. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my testimony today, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Aaron. You're up. And I would just tell people, if you haven't signed in, we don't have many people signed in to speak, so we could end the public hearing and you won't have an opportunity if you haven't signed in. So please do so if you want to speak.
That was a tough act to follow.
Sure
I think
was.
I'm going to hire you. Talk to me after. And Council President Jerem, that was an excellent pronunciation of my name, which almost no one ever gets, so great job. High stakes, right?
I went out on a limb and I guessed, to be perfectly honest with you.
I'm just going to do a slight correction. Members of the City Council, my name is Aaron Feichtinger. You got the German version.
Okay.
I work at 812 South 24th Street, and I am the Community Outreach and Advocacy Coordinator for Together, Inc., a social service agency here in Omaha whose mission is to end homelessness. I am here representing Together to express our concern about the Planning Department budget and the necessity of hiring an adequate amount of inspectors and support staff to implement our city's new proactive rental registration and inspection ordinance. The fiscal stability of our city depends in large part on the stability of its citizens, and this includes our vulnerable neighbors. To ensure that stability, we need to tackle problems like poverty and homelessness that sometimes can seem too big and too complicated, but we can make those problems smaller and more manageable bit by bit by investing now in proactive and preventative measures such as our recently passed rental ordinance. Your passage of the rental ordinance is going to have a tremendously positive impact on the citizens of Omaha. This is especially true for those we serve at Together. An effective code enforcement system will alleviate the burden felt by many low-income renters across our city who often pay more for less. It will provide stability and peace of mind for people who previously felt they had little recourse to solve problems like a broken furnace, broken windows, ovens that spark when you turn them on, and unsanitary conditions caused by infestations and unremedied water damage, all problems that we have seen in the course of doing our jobs. An effective system will keep people safe, it will keep our children healthier, and it will make our community a more vibrant, stable, and equitable place to live. All of these positive benefits to our community will only accrue if our housing inspectors are given the staff and support they need. With more inspectors and staff, we can ensure that a man with disabilities does not have to wait 2 months for his landlord to fix a broken window in the middle of winter, and that a mother does not have to keep worrying that the ceiling over her bathtub will cave in while her children bathe. Our city inspectors do an excellent job with what they have. We are always grateful for their time and attention when we have questions and when our clients need help. Omaha's master plan states that Omaha must be a community committed to promoting and maintaining a high quality of life for all of its people. And with the rental ordinance, we have moved closer to that goal. If a budget is a moral document, and I believe that it is, then let this one reflect that as a community, we care enough to ensure that no one has to live in substandard conditions simply because they cannot afford to change their circumstances. I appreciate your time and consideration. I know you've had an extremely long day, so thank you very much.
Senator Tony Vargas, followed by Jerry Sullivan.
Members of City Council, my name is Tony Vargas. I live at 713 Caniglia Plaza. I'm here to represent Omaha Healthy Kids Alliance, or OHKA. OHKA is a nonprofit organization in Omaha whose mission is to improve children's health through healthy homes. Now, we are here tonight to express our support for the preliminary budget with a direct amendment request regarding the hiring of additional number of inspectors and support staff to implement Omaha's proactive rental registration and inspection ordinance. Now, while we appreciate and thank the mayor for the budgeting and yourselves for an additional inspector in order to enforce the rental registry and ordinance, our organization believes it is of the utmost importance to hire additional inspectors to allow for this ordinance to be truly effective. Our programs at OHK focus on conducting low-cost construction interventions on homes to address health and safety concerns. Repairs such as gutter and handrail replacement, mold remediation, and bathroom waterproofing are common and help prevent asthma attacks and common injuries in the home. Now, local and national data shows that low-cost repairs such as these can provide big returns on health outcomes for children. 42 children in our asthma in-home response program had a collective 131 symptomatic days in the 2 weeks before our intervention. After we completed our intervention, and in the 2 weeks before our 6-month follow-up, this exact same children had a collective 11 symptomatic days. Those children also visited the ER a collective 17 times before our intervention and had only 4 visits afterwards. These results show that our low-cost interventions help reduce the unhealthy conditions in our families' homes. Now, 70% of the children we've served in the last year are on Medicaid. With these children utilize our emergency departments or have hospital stays, it places an undue burden on our healthcare system and on taxpayers. Children with asthma are often triggered by unhealthy living conditions. Of the children with asthma we serve, 59.4% live in rental properties. 59.4% live in rental properties. The proactive nature of this ordinance will allow landlords to keep their properties up to code. When properties are kept up to code, secondary problems such as moisture issues, which can cause mold and structural damage, will occur less frequently. This benefits the health of tenants and their children. The property owners will also incur less costly repairs, and the taxpayers who ultimately pay less for the health of their community. Now, when we remediate housing conditions that trigger asthma attacks in children, we see a significant reduction in asthma attacks in as little as 3 months. A proactive annual inspection can catch these triggers and may also reduce these conditions, but it is important that this ordinance has the people power to effectively conduct inspections and to enforce compliance in a timely manner so that these health benefits can be optimal. Now, this is why we are here to ask City Council to budget for a greater number of inspectors so that our entire community can benefit and the tenants of our city can live in healthier conditions. I want to thank you for listening to me, and I support the budget, but we want to make sure that there is more effective enforcement of this so that every single child lives in a healthy home. Thank you.
Thank you. And you went right at 3 minutes and 2/10 of a second. Bob Benzel?
With Jerry Sullivan's permission, I'm going to go next, and Jerry will follow.
Well, Gloria, I'm sorry. We don't have a process of yielding the floor. So, Jerry, either you speak or we'll go to Bob and then the next one.
My name is Jerry Sullivan. I reside at 132 North 33rd Street in Gifford Park. Honorable President and members of the City Council, all of the draft landlord registration ordinances proposed by this body last March, including the mayor's version, acknowledge that a significant portion of residential rental properties within the city are not being properly maintained as required by code. Research has shown that the impacts to the physical and mental health and welfare of the poor and economically disadvantaged from substandard housing are directly reflected in additional costs for our schools, our hospital emergency rooms, and our social service agencies, who must deal with these impacts. The downstream effects and indirect economic impacts of slumlords are devastating, but ultimately, the cost of these impacts is being borne by the taxpayers of Omaha, not the slumlords. I appreciate that you all put time and effort into the passage of this ordinance last April. If the ordinance had been allowed to go forward as originally crafted by Councilman Gray, Jerem, and Festerson, with sufficient fees and charges to make it self-funding, it would have been a huge step forward for Omaha. But Mayor Stothard's insistence upon registration fees and other fees being eliminated meant that funding for implementation had to come from city general funds. Last March, the City Finance Department prepared an estimate of the annual cost of implementing the program based on Councilman Harding's version, which focused only on the existing list of code violations. City Finance estimated it would cost $602,000 a year, and they'd have to add 7.5 new positions. Given this estimate, it's truly astounding that the mayor's new budget now only provides for one additional inspector. This program seems designed to fail. Landlords, even those in low-income settings, are profit-seeking after all. By not budgeting sufficient funds for a robust licensing and code enforcement program, the city is subsidizing the profits of these landlords on the backs of the poor. This council and the mayor have acknowledged that a significant portion of residential rental properties are not being maintained to code. Such substandard and deteriorating rental housing affects all of us who live in inner-city neighborhoods on a daily basis and erodes the stability and fabric and preservation of our neighborhoods. By not sufficiently funding the implementation of this ordinance, you fail to protect the poor and economically disadvantaged, particularly children, who are at the mercy of unscrupulous landlords, while at the same time giving TIF financing to wealthy real estate developers. You've also failed all taxpayers and citizens of Omaha by not protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the general public and our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Benzel, followed by Chris Foster.
My name is Bob Benzel. I live at 132 North 33rd Street. Every time I've been here, you've started with the Pledge of Allegiance, and so I started my talk with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to skip down. Liberty and justice for all is an issue of ethics and fairness. Omaha and Nebraska are looking to attract more people to our city. We need to balance the housing needs of the new arrival with those being concerned with the conditions of those who are already living here. Are you looking out for their welfare as well? Are you demanding ethical and affordable housing? Your budget for landlord registration says you are not. Liberty and justice for all, even the poorest renters, should not be dependent on the wishes of the real estate investors. Justice for all should not be reactive but proactive. It should not just occur when a court settlement is arrived at or a person goes to prison. Justice for all starts with good housing, food on the table, and a quality of life for all. Liberty for all includes the freedom from rats in your home, from leaking sewer pipes, from deteriorating roofs and neighborhoods. It includes safe streets and people feeling respected when dealing with the police force. The liberty of wanting to stay where you are because the housing is decent, affordable, and close to good schools. That is real liberty, and that can be provided as elected city representatives by providing money for a comprehensive landlord registration that protects not only our renters, but also our neighborhoods. So I ask you to adequately fund the landlord registration. If you can accept political donations from real estate industry, landlords and developers, then you can also ask them for the amount necessary to police their rental units, old and new. To do less is to truly make a hypocrisy of liberty and justice for all. Your budget should be reflective on the city of the future. Rentals that are inspected and secure, street and neighborhoods that are safe. Provide for us a city where liberty and justice for all actually exist, rather than a tagline at the end of a feel-good opening ritual. Handing over a city that is truly better when you leave this office should be your lasting gift to our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Foster, followed by Lisa Kelly.
Hi, Chris Foster, 3413 California Street. I'm a landlord and Gifford Park Neighborhood Association board member. I'm the landlord rep. My focus is mainly on the registration because I think that can really save money in the budget and efficiencies. Big thing is there's a lot of landlords that hide behind LLCs, and it's very difficult a lot of times when somebody will call me and they don't want to complain to the city. They want to come to me and, hey, I can't find the owner. I want to try to solve this problem, get a hold of them. And then when I try to find that information and I can't, and then sometimes I'll go to Chris or somebody else, and it's very difficult. So I think registering with up-to-date information so us as neighborhoods can try to fix our own problems and not burden the city with involving the city if we can. And then we establish relationships with those property owners, and which can help, maybe there's some situation where, somebody has passed away or something has happened where there's a reason for a property to go unkempt and so forth. The biggest thing, again, is accountability with landlords, and I think any good landlord would not mind their name and information being available, I would think, to the general public if there's a problem. Rental property is a business like other businesses, and other businesses you have to register and you have to, there's regulations, so I think some regulations at a level are not bad. And I think just the last thing, again, in the name of efficiency, transparency, accountability, and ultimately really to save money and to help the neighborhoods be more efficient and help ourselves, really ask that you implement the registration and again, with these LLCs, absentee landlords, that's a huge problem in Gifford Park and especially North Omaha. So, thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Kelly, followed by Chantel. Is it Ports or Portis? Lisa Kelly? Going once? Twice? Okay. Chantel? Portis? Going once? Twice? Okay. How about Marcus Fort Leroy, 4717 North 80th Street? Marcus? Okay. Dennis Walsh. Followed by Karen McElroy.
Good evening, Dennis Walsh, 2120 Spencer Street, Omaha, Together One Community. 2020 should begin the process of changing to proactive code enforcement. Instead, the budget reflects a continued orientation towards reacting to complaints. In general, code enforcement is not set up to communicate with and gather input from the public. The administration says adding one inspector is enough for now. We'll do it like before, but with 10% better. That shows they're not following their own research. At the March public hearing, Stu Craven introduced into the record a guide to proactive rental inspection program. It lists the elements that determine the success of proactive programs. The first two are involve diverse stakeholders in designing the program and involving community-based organizations in implementation. Many community groups want to provide input to the department in design and implementation of the program, but a wall has been built to shut out that input. For example, on March 1st, OTOC asked the planning department to answer questions regarding the proposed ordinances. We were told not at this time, but later communications on April 12th, April 29th, and May 13th were simply ignored. 5 months later, we continue to wait for the department's response. Public servants should not behave in this way. There is a better way. Minneapolis has operated a proactive system for several decades. On a recent Friday morning, I emailed the department a question using their website. That Saturday afternoon, the supervisor of 45 housing inspectors wrote a reply asking to set up a conference call with us to answer our questions. 10 days later, she gave us 40 minutes of her time to answer questions about how their program works, including introductions to other experts across the country. What a contrast. It shouldn't be this way, but it will take money and effort to become a proactive department. It has taken the Omaha Police Department a long time and a commitment from the top to embrace proactive community policing. And they're still not there yet, but that's the kind of effort it will take from code enforcement to change. We know it can be done. One inspector won't get us there, nor would 4. But fully funding the ordinance with 4 new inspectors would show that they are starting on a process of fundamental change. The rental ordinance gives them a structure to change. This budget shows a failure to accept that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen McElroy, followed by Gloria Osterberry.
Good evening. My name is Karen McElroy from Omaha Together One Community and Holy Name Catholic Church. There are 80,000 estimated rental properties in Omaha today. The registration of those properties are part of the rental property registration and inspection starting in 2020. The work of the annual inspection on problem properties will also continue. The city says that there are 500 problem properties on the list. To have the rental property ordinance be successful, there needs to be transparency and accountability in its implementation. Both Mr. Fanslaw and the Chief of Staff, Marty Billick, expressed that if more inspectors are needed, they could be added to the planning department. OTOC's question is, how will they know if more inspectors are needed? What is the data that the planning department will use to make these decisions? It is time for transparency in the planning department. What data do they now have that shows that one inspector is needed? Have they shared this data with the mayor and the city council? OTOC believes that they make these decisions, the planning department will need to share the data that the department has completed as part of the ordinance. This information should be shared with the mayor and the city council every 3 months. Here are some possible questions that would need to be answered. How many properties have been registered? What is the city's projection of the number of rental properties that will fail to register and end up on the annual property inspection group? How many properties have been inspected? What is the failure rate of inspections of problem properties? What is the average amount of time it will take to close these cases? With the rental property ordinance, the planning department will need to be more efficient. How will the mayor, the city council, and the public know without sharing the data and comparing it to previous years? After years of our complaint-driven system that allowed Yale Park to deteriorate because of no complaints, the planning department had to displace hundreds of residents. The planning department remains responsible for the safety of all families in rental properties, and that this is just as important as the new obligations for the property owners. We ask for leadership from the council to ask questions and gather data on the implementation of this ordinance. OTOC believes that the planning department needs to see the safety of the tenants is as important as the needs of the landlords. If Omaha is going to have safe, minimal standards for rental property, then the planning department needs to provide transparency and accountability in their work and make decisions that protect all of these citizens, landlords and tenants alike. Attached to my testimony is a letter and pictures.
You're at your time,
okay?
so wrap up, please.
Okay. So that is from Hannah for Restored Dignity. I'd like you to take a look at those pictures, please, because they're from 2 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gloria Osterberry, followed by Susan Kuhlman.
My name is Gloria Osterberry, member of OTOC and Augustana Lutheran Church. When the City Council passed a landlord registration and inspection ordinance and Mayor Gene Stothert signed it, OTOC's Housing Coalition was hopeful. of the positive changes ahead for rental housing. But the administration's proposed budget only calls for adding one more housing code inspector for 2020. As my colleague Mr. Sullivan said previously, the Finance Department assessed and analyzed the original problem properties ordinance as proposed by Councilman Harding and determined 4 additional inspectors would be needed to implement it. That's why OTOC is asking the City Council now to assure funding for a new total of 13 inspectors, not 10. A solid inspection staff will resolve fairly the hundreds of problem property cases that have been pending for months and even years. Coalition partners have elaborated on this, and now my comments will focus on 3 specific areas. 1, the proposed demolition budget for removing condemned structures. 2nd, the need for a plan for helping vulnerable tenants displaced when their homes have been declared unfit for habitation. And thirdly, the need for housing agencies to be at the table with city planners. The proposed budget reduces funding for demolitions by about 25%. It's down to $800,000 due to the city deciding it has made headway on the large backlog we once had. OTOC is glad for this progress. We asked the city to give more funds for demolition every year for at least the past 8 years. And over $1 million per year was allocated recently. Now we are told instead of over 700 structures awaiting demolition, there are just 100 or so. We celebrate that. But we do urge careful attention. Watch how the current enforcement strategy rolls out. If Omaha succeeds in holding owners of rental units accountable, getting them to fix problems and not abandon neglected property so often, there will be less need for city-funded demolitions going forward. We hope we get to that point quickly. Now, regarding plans for helping tenants displaced in the inspection process, we know people are already being displaced. Residents are often told they are in a dangerous rental unit and must leave it. It is often that a tenant makes a complaint and then the landlord does not renew their lease. Several housing agencies try to help tenants facing displacement, but they are frequently overwhelmed with the level of need. You currently don't have a plan or budget to assist tenants that are displaced by code enforcement. We need this. We urge the city planners to collaborate with agency representatives serving the most vulnerable tenants among us so the system can curb displacement whenever possible and also respond to tenants' displacement. There are countless other ways collaboration will contribute to a better system. You have learned this evening who some of these agency spokespersons are and what are their areas of expertise. So thank you for listening to us, and we appreciate the opportunity to respond to the proposed budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Kuhlman, followed by Lee Myers.
Good evening. I'm Susan Coleman at 9242 Raven Oaks Drive. I'm a member of Holy Name and the OTOC housing team. As cities transition, it is important that departments and budgets keep pace, including in terms of housing. Like other cities, Omaha is seeing an increase in rental properties. The planning department needs to stay ahead of these trends and to hire sufficient inspectors to enforce the new landlord registration and inspection ordinance. It was passed to address current transitions and the problem of tenants living in substandard conditions. Necessary enforcement funding in the 2020 budget is essential to make this ordinance successful. Here's what's happening in Omaha. According to the census, from 2010 to 2017, the number of owner-occupied housing units grew by 7,000, while the number of rental units grew by 12,000. At that rate, by 2020, the number of rental units will have increased 27% in a decade. In addition to new construction, the increase includes conversion of homes into rental units, which decreases the number of owner-occupied dwellings in an area. So what is the city's response? Again, going back in time, the budget called for 10 inspectors in 2017, 9 in 2018. But at the time of the Yale Park Apartments eviction, it had only 6. Omaha did have 10 inspectors in 2010, which is the exact same number called for 10 years later in the 2020 budget. Failing to increase the budget to add more inspectors in these changing times means that each inspector must now take on 27% increase in workload. This while housing stock ages and a new ordinance mandates annual inspections on problem properties. The math just doesn't add up. OTOC believes the proposed budget fails neighborhoods increasingly dominated by rental units. We urge the city to fully fund the ordinance, including funds for 3 more inspectors, and to make sure the administration actually hires well-trained and motivated people to help solve this problem.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Lee Myers, followed by Juan Alvarado.
Hello, good evening. A year ago, you said you would improve the process of the CIP review, and this is better. Thanks. Glad we have this evening. We didn't have to do all this afternoon. I bet you're glad about that, too. I'm going to speak to the transportation portion of the CIP and the budget.
Lee, did you give your name and address?
Lee Myers, 105 South 9th Street. Sorry.
It's okay.
I should know that. ModeShift has put 7 years of CIPs into a database. That's 42 years of data, and we've analyzed it, but we had to put it in our own database because the city doesn't do it. It just puts out in a document, a PDF document. But digging into that data, what it reminds me of in a basketball, if you're driving this direction and then you stop and go the crossover dribble and go the other, you faked or feinted one way and faked it. And then, or if you're James Harden, you step back and do a 3. This CIP, to me, seems, after digging in all that, it's a fake, it's a feint. And then you put it on the shelf, the mayor and public works then does whatever they want to do. It's a strong mayor system, okay, that's where it is. That's the way it has to be. But what, if you step back from this fake detail, what is really being said by the CIP and especially the transportation part of it? I would say a couple truisms. First, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. If you find yourself in a pothole, stop adding lane miles. If you don't have enough money to maintain the lane miles you have, and then you're adding lane miles every year to that which you can't maintain, that's crazy. You have to look at these 10 multi-lane divided speedways you're building out west. 120th, 132nd, 144th, 156th, 168th, 180th, 192nd, plus Maple, Center, and Harrison. You're building 10 speedways in city, and all of those are adding lane miles. Where are you going to get the money to build those 10 speedways? You don't see the total price of those speedways because you just have it a little bite at a time. How much is it going to cost to build the speedway from 192nd down to the Interstate 80? It's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars, but you don't see that. And then the money coming in, the wheel tax, the gas tax, the state money, the federal money for bonds, it comes in a financial maze built on top of an enigma that only an accountant can like. But what you put out on your budget doesn't say where this $20 million of maintenance is going to come from. I think you can get another 20, which is what the 40 million that was the target. You could get the other 20 out of slowing down your adding lane miles of all these multi-lane, divided speedways out. Now, those...
You're at your 3 minutes, so I need you to wrap up.
We presently regret doing the North Freeway, and you look back and say that was a bad idea. Future councils are going to look back at you and say, you're slicing and dicing West Omaha in the same way. You're killing the neighborhood travel, you're killing the neighborhood commerce, and...
Thank you. Juan Alvarado, followed by Luis Jimenez.
Good evening, City Councilman. My name is Juan Alvarado, 3060 Titus Ave. First of all, I want to say I commend all of you because you're doing a good job. This is not an easy job. There's a lot of money that you guys have to balance. And I'm a firm believer, I manage a small business of my own, that you have to spend money in order to go forward. I'm not against spending the money. I'm just here to put my 2 cents. We have to be responsible with other people's money. And I refer into the construction budgets that we have. There's a lot of city funding that's going around, and I asked the city council to look into, and I think we're working on it, but I need to address it every time I can, and I think this is a proper opportunity to see if we can come up with an ordinance that if there's a city funding project, we make the contractors who are exploiting immigrant workers, who are exploiting vulnerable workers out there, misclassifying as an independent contractor versus when they're an employee. My biggest issue with city projects, we don't have a resolution or a state ordinance that we want to follow. There is a state ordinance, LB 563, that prohibits the misclassification of workers, classifying them as an independent contractor when really they're an employee. I think if we're funding in any way, shape, or form, especially in TIF projects, that we should come up with a resolution or an ordinance from the city that we can govern that. That is our money. I'm not going to go tell somebody who's got private money how to conduct their business, but when they're asking for our help and our support, I think we should have an input in that, you know. And with that, I applaud you guys. You guys have a tough job. It's a lot of money that you guys have to gamble. And with that, my due respects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Luis Jimenez, followed by Larry Stewart.
Luis Jimenez, 2417 Burdette Street. I'm accounting from Culture House. I want you guys to listen to me very carefully because I'm being serious. People here were talking about housing inspectors, needing more inspectors. Perhaps there's a federal grant that can fund federal inspections for the city. What I want to talk about is the budget item under community involvement. Actually, I'm not sure if that's exactly what it is. It funds community involvement like the UNMC Hospital and College. Millions of dollars, $3 million. I'm not quite sure if you guys are still funding that, but I'm going to guess you are. I've asked the council and I've asked the county Board of Commissioners to fund gun violence research. And I'm doing it again today. Please fund with your local money gun violence research. I want to relay an incident that happened over Native Omaha Days. August 1st, a black vehicle without plates of registration, without plates, it had transits on it, drove over the right-of-way of 2417 Burdette Street. And I went to tell the officers on 24th Street that that's what was going on. And they said to call the police. The police told me to call the police. On August 3rd, sage burning, my friend Duan was sage burning throughout 24th Street during the festivities. And it changed the energy of people that passed through the atmosphere. And he was told not to do that, even though people were smoking cigarettes outside. And then on August 4th in the morning, there was a shooting that was misreported, incorrectly reported by the news outlet that the shooting happened on 2417 Burdette Street. However, the shooting happened on Grant Street, nearby. Mr. Gray, I told you that Burdette Street, the Culture House, was getting trashed on by other individuals. Culture House is the only property that has an in-way, or whatever it's called, in the whole block there, the street. And I was worried that that property was gonna get more than trash put on them, and we got
Keep it
a
to
shooting.
Luis, you're off
And
topic.
we got
Budget.
a shooting put on it. So
You're out
on
of-
budget, on your money, how does that translate to services? And I'm asking you guys to fund gun violence research. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry Storr, followed by Ian Salzman.
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska, 68132. In regards to the budget, I just want to say I'm basically against it. We need to cut the budget. We need to shave some programs, particularly programs for social reasons. And the rules for debate. This was,
Budget, Larry.
excuse me, but this was
Budget
not a
only.
meeting for OTOC.
You're out of order.
This
Come
is
back
a
in
meeting
the-
on the budget.
You've been warned.
Okay, take me.
See ya.
This was not a meeting for inspections, ladies and gentlemen.
Ian Salzman, you're up.
You cut me off.
See ya.
Everybody else is off the topic. Everybody else is off the topic.
Welcome, Mr. Salzman.
Thank you. Members of City Council, good evening. My name is Ian Salzman, and I am a rising college senior. I live at 5022 North 78th Street in Councilman Festerson's district. I'm here to argue for why the City of Omaha should renew their contract with First Star Recycling. Seattle has one of the most comprehensive recycling programs in the country. With this, the city has cultivated a nationally renowned identity as one of the most sustainable cities in the country. This program includes a number of social and economic benefits. First, it contributes to the well-being of the local and regional environment. Second, it encourages innovation among coffee houses, grocery stores, and other businesses to attract their growing consumer base of sustainably minded, young, middle-class millennials. And third, it contributes to the local economy by promoting a competitive market for these sustainable businesses. Here in Omaha, we are attracting the same environmentally conscious consumer base as Seattle. According to a 2016 article in the World Herald, Omaha ranked 6th among the 50 largest metro areas in population growth among millennials between 2005 and 2015. Local business is already capitalizing on this change. The upscale Grey Plume restaurant in Midtown is the only green restaurant certified business in the state, thanks to the exquisite locally sourced meals. Restaurants like Block 16 and Modern Love feature vegan meat alternatives in their staple menu items. Zen Coffee Company, a member of the National Green Business Network, incorporates environmental consciousness into every step of its model, from its quality-sourced coffee beans to its zero-waste storefront. The Tea-Smith, the Omaha Farmers Market, Coneflower Creamery, the list of businesses and associations that incorporate sustainability into their practice goes on and on. By eliminating Omaha's recycling program, the city undermines the innovative business models of places like these and institutes a vote of no confidence in the future of green entrepreneurship. Stifling innovation is not how Omaha emerges as the next great Midwest city. Sticking to what we're comfortable with what's familiar, is the model of earlier Rust Belt cities like Gary, Indiana, or Detroit, which were so reliant on the steel and auto industries that they were familiar with, that they failed to embrace the market innovations of their era. Their business collapsed, and their cities plummeted from the heights of their industries to the depths of mediocrity where they've remained. Omaha has always been at the forefront of industry and innovation. It's what's gotten us this far. But if we are to continue this progress, we must embrace this new reality of business. Sustainability is responsible and profitable, good for the environment and good for business. And this drive towards sustainability isn't limited to the business sector. Families and young people alike desire better public transportation, more bike lanes, more walkable streets, and more green spaces in their cities.
Gonna need you to wrap up your
Okay, gotcha. Okay, in abstaining from a basic recycling program, our local government stifles our community's budding concern for environmental preservation. You are this local government, and $1.7 million is a small price to pay to enable Omaha to become the most cutting-edge, most sustainable Midwest city in the next decade.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick Wren, followed by the last person we have signed up is Cora Johnson.
Patrick Wren, 4903 California Street, Omaha, Nebraska. Sticking to the budget and potholes. There's a number of 200 million that's been thrown around that's needed to get those potholes fixed. Whether it's a legitimate number or not, I frankly have no idea. I would like to turn this whole meeting around and ask a couple questions, so.
Council doesn't entertain questions at this meeting, but if you have questions, you'd like to submit them to your council member, you can do that after the meeting.
I'm not surprised. Now, keeping in the potholes, it's paid a lot for with our registration and taxes that we spend on our cars. I recently bought a brand new Altima Nissan. It cost me $2,000 to pay taxes and register that sucker. Now, in the council's defense, and my source is Chip Maxwell, a good friend of mine, a state senator, former county commissioner, editor of the World Herald. Out of that $2,000, and please correct me, you guys are only getting about 16 to 18 cents out of every dollar that I spent. Okay? I'd like to know where the rest of that money is going. And it's going to a couple other government entities, but why are they in turn not responsible like you are to put that money towards our streets? Something is very amiss here. It doesn't pass the smell test. Keeping to the budget of $200 million. Doggone it. This is the worst winter I've ever seen for potholes. In fact, I ran into one right over by Memorial Park. Twisted my right ankle. I got out, couldn't get the car out. My wheels were spinning, and they were spinning so hard, I heard this thud, and this came out of the pothole. This is a fish. The fish was in a pothole, okay? I have witnesses. I'm suggesting this. We have a problem with our streets. I'm not blaming the council or the mayor. It's been going on for years. I would like to have the people in this room and the council vote on the following. I'd like to have this fish mounted, okay, and stuffed, and either put on the mayor's front door or maybe the public works door as a memento to what every one of us in this room had to put up with. I mean, is that a fair question? I'm sorry, I can't ask any questions.
It was rhetorical, right?
It was a rhetorical question. Of course. I'm on your side, you guys.
All right.
But you need to take more money for that registration. It's as simple as that. And I'm a very fiscal conservative. There's something very wrong there.
Thank you. Cora Johnson.
I don't have any fish in mind, so I'd like to apologize up front.
Name and address.
Good afternoon, council members and citizens of Omaha. My name is Cora Johnson, and I am the treasurer and with Students for Sustainability, a student-led coalition which is dedicated to climate justice. Additionally, I would like to talk a little bit about my personal background. As a wide-eyed 8-year-old girl, I stood in front of the Elkhorn Educational Board and begged for a grant to implement a recycling program at Fire Ridge Elementary. Yes, you heard me right. That would be 2008 because I am a prime 18-year-old standing here. But I was given that. But flash forward 11 years and I am here asking you guys to do the same thing in Omaha, which consequently has driven me to wonder, why should we have recycling. Omaha is known for its cutting-edge medical care, baseball, and just for its absolutely amazing city. And that is one thing that I know we all have in common, is that we are extremely proud of Omaha. If Omaha has been a leader in innovative medical care, why wouldn't we wish to keep our streets, planet, and citizens healthier? This is not something that should be left open to new bids or worth spending $25 million approximately to create a new recycling center. While I understand that some support the proposed trash budget and describe it as readable and transparent for its proposed allocation of remaining funds to go towards, to change no cities, to propose that the city does not have any change in property tax or a 2.5 restaurant tax. However, I am definitely the first person to admit that I would love to have a cone flour ice cream cone with a 2.5 restaurant tax. However, more importantly, we are turning the Climate's one chance into an object which we value less than taxes. But we always seem to look over the fact that we are habitually excessive consumers. In fact, 57.3 billion plastic water bottles were sold in 2014 alone. While this is a shocking number, the world is producing over 300 million tons of plastic every year, which 50% of it is made for single-use purposes. And of all that litter, 14% of it is litter of just plastic beverage containers, not including the labels or caps. Well, luckily, we currently recycle in Omaha, so we can turn that 14% of litter into recyclable goods. However, that may be ending soon, so all the waste will be put into the trash can. But, I ask myself, every week a garbage man drives down my streets and picks up my trash. So who cares? I don't live in it. I live in a beautiful city. Well, you're right. However, as you guessed, we don't keep the majority of our trash here in the United States. In fact, Malaysia recently begged the United States and other large countries to please stop sending our waste to them. This waste includes some of the 8 million tons of plastic that is dumped into the oceans every year, which was done in a study issued by the World Economic Forum. The country continued to state, we cannot accept the idea that waste from rich countries should be given to poor countries, and I couldn't agree more with that. More than an idea, Omaha has a moral obligation as a privileged city to provide for our citizens in the global community. I would like to personally challenge Omaha council members and citizens and city officials to vote to keep Omaha beautiful by reducing our city's waste through recycling. Remember to always reuse, reduce, and recycle in that order. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. That concludes the public hearing. It's closed. We need a motion and a...
Festerson. Gray. Harding. Melton. Pauls. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 7:31.